Going to call our meeting to order, and just note that we have full attendance at the meeting tonight, and advise that we are live streaming and recording this meeting, and ask that all persons are respectful and considerate of other persons attending the meeting, and language and conduct at the meeting that could be perceived as offensive, defamatory or threatening to a person attending the meeting or listening to the recording is not acceptable. And for the purposes of the recording, elected members should wait until I announce them before speaking, and I request that all devices be turned off or put to silent. So I will start. There are no apologies and there's no leave of absence. I'll start with an acknowledgement to country, and just wanted to this week just acknowledge that NAIDOC week will start later this week. I think it's over the weekend. The acronym of NAIDOC stands for National Aboriginal and Islanders Day Observance Committee, and the origins of NAIDOC week can be traced back to the Aboriginal rights movement. On Australia Day in 1938, protesters marched through the streets of Sydney about the status and treatment of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians. This protest, way back in 1938, was one of the first major civil rights gatherings in the world, and it became known as the Day of Mourning. Between 1940 and 1955, the Day of Mourning was held annually on the Sunday before Australia Day and was commonly known as Aborigines Day. In 1955, it was decided that Aborigines Day should include a celebration of Aboriginal culture, heritage and achievement. And in 1975, that day became a week, and it's now celebrated as NAIDOC Week. And it highlights the achievements of Indigenous people all over Australia. So I'm not exactly sure what we're doing in Hobart for NAIDOC Week, but I'm sure that there'll be plenty of things happening, and it seemed appropriate to acknowledge that to start our meeting this week. The minutes of our last meeting, held on the 26th of May 2025. Would someone like to move those, Deputy? Seconder for the minutes, Councillor Lohberger. Any discussion or comments on the minutes? There being none, I'll put all those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. It's carried unanimously. Item 3 is the transfer of agenda items. Would anyone like to move that any items on the open or closed be moved on their place on the agenda? There being none, we'll move on to item 4, which is notification of council workshops. So we have had 2 since we last met. So on the 16th of June, there was a workshop for the draft annual plan and budget, which we're talking about again tonight. The elected member legal costs, also on the agenda tonight. City of Hobart, LGAT, unreasonable conduct of elected members. And then on the 23rd of June, we discussed the revised City of Hobart Risk Management Framework, the presentation of the Country Culture People 2025-2028 plan, and the Information Technology Strategy 2025 to 2030. So they were the things that we discussed at that workshop. Item 5 is public question time. We have no questions that have been received on notice. Are there any from the floor? I'm not sure we've got any members of the public here. So we will move on now to item 5.2, which is responses to public questions taken on notice. We've got 2 responses. If someone would like to move those. Moved by Deputy, seconded by Councillor Posselt. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 6 is petitions. We have not received any petitions. Item 7 is consideration of supplementary items, and we have none.
Lord Mayor, may I just ask in this point, I don't know what communication from the chair may come.
It does.
Will it? Yeah, thank you.
You know exactly what I was...
Yes, yeah. Item 7, supplementary items, no, there are none. And in item 8 is indications of pecuniary and conflicts of interest. Councillor Kitsos.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll be stepping out for item 15 tonight.
So item 15, Councillor Kitsos. Any others? There being none, we will move on to communications from the Chair. Now, I will start, which I think Alderman Zuko may have been keen to ensure, to acknowledge the passing of the former Lady Mayoress Fumiko Plaister. It is with great sadness that I advise the Chamber of the passing of former Hobart City Council Lord Mayoress, or Lady Mayoress, sorry, Fumiko Plaister, on the 14th of June 2025, aged 91 years. Fumiko's journey with Hobart began in the mid-1970s when the then Lord Mayor, Alderman Doug Plaister, visited Yaizu and met a remarkable local woman, Fumiko, who would later become his wife. Together they laid the foundation for what would become one of the most enduring and meaningful sister city relationships between Hobart and Yaizu, formalised on the 17th of February 1977. This relationship is now the 6th oldest Japan-Australia sister city partnership in the country. For decades and well beyond her time as Lady Mayoress, Fumiko was a tireless champion of this connection. Her efforts helped to build a lasting bridge between our cities, and one that has carried cultural exchanges, student delegations and friendships. Her personal involvement in council delegations to Yaizu and in welcoming Yaizu delegations to Hobart was very much appreciated, and it was very instrumental in strengthening those ties. Her contributions extended beyond diplomacy. She was a life member of the Australia-Japan Society Tasmania since 2007, and for over 30 years she passionately promoted Japanese art and culture, encouraged the study of Japanese language and offered hospitality to Japanese visitors in Tasmania. She danced in the council's Christmas pageant alongside visiting performers, including the former Mayor of Yaizu's wife, Mrs. Tomato, who travelled to Tasmania with a group of dancers to participate in that pageant. In recognition of her lifelong dedication, Fumiko was awarded the Japanese Foreign Minister's Award and the prestigious Order of the Rising Sun Silver Rays. This is an honour bestowed on individuals who have rendered distinguished service to Japan, and she was truly deserving. Fumiko will be remembered for her extraordinary contributions to Hobart and Yaizu and in the enduring friendship between Tasmania and Japan. So we send our deepest and sincere sympathies to her family and friends. And as a mark of respect, I'd ask that the Chamber rise and observe a minute's silence. Continue with my communications. I'd like to speak to the 2025-26 budget estimates, which we'll be considering as the next item on the agenda. The budget we will be considering tonight is both responsible and balanced. We are budgeting operating expenditure of almost $184 million and forecasting a modest operating surplus of $1 million. The budget presented tonight is the result of months of work by elected members working with staff. There have been 4 workshops and 2 planning days where we have been provided briefings and updates on the finances and the draft budget, and elected members in attendance have been able to provide feedback and input into the budget. I'll start with rates. We are acutely aware of the significant cost of living pressures facing some members of our community, and so in response we've worked to limit the increase in rates, and I'm pleased to report that the proposed increase represents one of the lowest average rate increases across all councils in Tasmania, and is the lowest among the greater Hobart councils. Specifically, we are proposing an overall 3.5% rate increase, 3.5% increase in rates revenue. For residential ratepayers, this equates to $1.35 per week, or approximately $70 average increase for a year. For our commercial ratepayers, we've also taken a measured approach. Commercial ratepayers will benefit from a reduced cap on rate increases, down from 10% to 5%, easing the transition to capital value rating. The budget is focused on an investment in services, so we will continue to invest in programs and services that benefit the people of Hobart and shape our inclusive and vibrant city. This includes $18.4 million for the management of our parks, bushland reserves, sports facilities and the aquatic centre, $8.6 million for maintaining our roads and footpaths and supporting transport options, $5.1 million for keeping our city clean, $3.9 million for managing household waste, recycling and FOGO collections, $3.9 million for supporting community events and programs, $2.6 million for tourism services such as the Tourism and Travel and Information Centre and Salamanca Market, $2.6 million for creative programs, $1.4 million for economic development initiatives and $1 million for positive ageing and youth programs. This year we have a capital works program of $36.8 million, with the focus being on maintaining and improving existing assets rather than new assets. So there is $15.8 million allocated for new assets, but that includes $13.5 million for the Greater Hobart Ferry expansion, with the work that we're doing on behalf of the 4 metro councils. There's $14.6 million for asset renewal and asset upgrades, and that includes $5.2 million of road renewal, $1 million of bridge renewals, $1 million for footpath renewals, $980,000 for renewals at the Doon Kennedy Aquatic Centre, and in addition to that, $360,000 for the sauna and spa renewal, $625,000 for stormwater renewals, $600,000 for the Queenborough Oval change rooms, and $3.5 million for plant and equipment, including the commencement of electrifying the city's light vehicle fleet. So taking all this into account, our overall operating result positions council strongly for the future. With a total revenue of $184.9 million and operating expenditure of $183.9 million, this budget is forecast to leave us with a $1 million surplus at the end of this financial year. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the CEO and the officers who have worked so hard to deliver these outcomes in preparing the budget for 25-26, and I commend this budget to my elected member colleagues, and I look forward to hearing everyone's contribution to this item, and I'd like to invite someone to open this item.
Happy to move the item.
Moved by Councillor Harvey.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Dutta. Discussion.
Just a question, Lord Mayor. You mentioned a number of different areas where the expenditure is allocated, and I was just wondering about homelessness. I understand that last year it was 31,000, and there has been an increase that was suggested in the workshop of another 36. So I just want clarification and if that assumption of mine is correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Through you. Yes, Councillor, there is allocation available for the additional payment to that housing initiative of approximately $40,000.
Thank you.
Alderman Bloomfield.
Just wanted to confirm there's a contingency fund of 391,000 and then we've got the surplus of 0.5%, which is another $1 million. Are they the two contingency funds or surplus monies that we have available for anything going wrong?
Through you, CEO.
Through you, Lord Mayor. So the contingency, the 300,000 is in the capital program. So yes, that is in addition, but that will, as we've seen this year, that contingency in the capital will move up and down as we move through the project year.
Looking through, that 391,000 is around about 3%, which is still below the industry standard of 5 to 10%. Other than that, and the fact that we've got $1 million surplus, which obviously brings that up, which is good, I would like to perhaps suggest that next year we can probably champion another increase in this contingency, but other than that, I'm quite happy. Thank you.
Further discussion. Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I'll be quick here. I think this is an excellent budget. I think it's really reflects well on the staff and the CEO. When we brought in Mr Stretton as the new CEO, there were some requests made of him by this council, and I think the number one request was to curb to bring down costs of the council so that we can keep rate rises low, and he has achieved that, and I'm very impressed, and I'm very pleased to be a part of this council at this time. I just wanted to welcome the document itself. You know, we're paying down debt by almost 10%, we're delivering the lowest rate rise in Greater Hobart, and we're also delivering an operating surplus of $1 million. These are excellent figures on top of all the capital expenditure that we're making, and I do hope we can continue this. But yeah, I commend this budget to my colleagues as well. It's an excellent budget. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Further discussion. Councillor Porcel.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just some questions, if I may. On table 5, it shows a $90,000 difference in elected member expenses as compared to the last financial year. I was wondering if we could have some further information on why the change and what the difference is.
Through you, Lord Mayor. So that's just reflective of the LGAT information that came out around the superannuation at this stage.
Excellent, thank you. And in the next table down, table 6, I noticed that the grant funding appears to be 50% lower, is how I read that table, for sporting and bushland grants. I was just wondering if I'm reading that correctly, and is that a reduction in grants from us to other entities, or is that a reduction in grants from state and federal parties to us?
So through you, Lord Mayor, that's actually grants that we pay out. So if you have a look, the community grants has actually increased. So it's came out of sport and bushland and moved into community grants.
Further discussion?
Final one, Lord Mayor. Thank you for your patience. In the annual plan reserve funds balance sheet forecast, it reports that the Queen's Domain Facility Upgrade Fund is projected to be $3.25 million. I was wondering if the capital works upgrades for this financial year for the Domain Athletic track, the centre track, athletic centre track, and the turf soil wicket. Yes, so turf wicket soil shed at the TCA have been funded from that $3.25 million pool that we have.
Through you, Lord Mayor, no, they won't be. The previous decision of council was specifically for parking upgrades and facilities, so it can't be used on other infrastructure up on the Queen's Domain.
Further discussion? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We've definitely turned an important corner, I think, in terms of the finances with this council. When I was first elected, I was a lot more worried than I am now around the direction we're heading. Like I said, we've turned the corner, but things aren't moving as fast as I would like. I do have the peace of mind, at least knowing that we're on the right trajectory. So obviously, as we all know, we're in a cost of living crisis, and I've heard a lot of praise out there, praising ourselves for being able to keep the percentage down to 3.5%. But in looking at that, I think we need to be aware of the base, where we're coming from, what we're adding the 3.5% to. And in doing that, I've been doing some comparisons just to see, because we all heard anecdotally around Hobart being one of the most expensive rating councils, and from what I've been checking out, it's definitely the case. So I just wanted to share some stats, because I think it shows that we can congratulate ourselves and things are stepping in the right direction, but there's a lot more work to do. For example, an obvious comparison in Tasmania is with Launceston, and Launceston has a far larger area. We cover 78 kilometres squared, and Launceston has 1,400. It has twice the amount of road to look after, and it has more people as well. Despite that, Launceston extracts $85 million from its ratepayers, and this year we're looking to bring in $120. We have $30 million in debt, and when I was first elected that was pushing up towards 70, so obviously I'm pleased about that. We're looking to have $32.5 million in debt by the end of 2026. Launceston has zero. They're spending about the same amount we are on capital works. But then another comparison is we spend $80 million on labour, whereas they spend $58 million. These are big drops. But the one that hits home the most for me is the rates per capita. So Hobart, the rates per capita based on this year's rates will be $2,142. In Launceston, it's nearly half, at $1,197. I think that shows that other councils, more area, more people, more road, are able to do it more efficiently and deliver better value for money in terms of their ratepayers. That's what I'm looking at this from, is that value for rates lens. I'm pro amalgamations, and when I did the comparison with Geelong, it hit home how effective economies of scale can be, because Geelong, for example, has 5 times as many people. It is 15 times bigger, but its workforce is only 3 times bigger than Hobart, which goes to show that economies of scale really do kick in. And with Tasmania having 29 councils, I truly know that that's not sustainable. And it's been posted on Twitter that I'm not happy with the 3.5% and what would I do. I've got very clear answers on what I would do. I would bring this council back to core services, the services that the council is expected to deliver and deliver well and deliver efficiently. I would focus all staffing towards those core services and phase out the fluffy woke stuff through natural attrition. I would invest heavily in technology and make sure that that staff have what they need to do in that space, and be so adamant on creating efficiencies, around use of artificial intelligence and whatever else, but we have to get more efficient. And I would also be really strict in terms of making sure that everything we do is delivering value for the ratepayers and it's focused on the core business. I don't think that we can rest on we're capital city, so we're special, we're more expensive to run. It's not justifiable. Like the figures I've just shared, I don't think they're defensible. I also don't think what is defensible is some of our grant expenditure. And I note that on our website, our public website, it has the grants recipients page, but there's only the name of the recipient, the title of the project, which is often very vague, it leaves you no idea what the actual project is, and the amount. So we need to be much more transparent in that space, because we're talking about cost of living crises and having to be mindful of rate increases and how proud we are of the 3.5%. But how can we be really taken seriously when we put out grants for $15,000 for ceramic burrows, $1,500 for scream and shout poetry, $7,500 for climate action guest speakers? Can I have an extension of 3 minutes, please?
So that's moved by Councillor Posselt, seconded by Deputy Lord Mayor. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
No, carried unanimously.
Thank you. $7,500 for milk tap for uni students, $12,000 to UTAS, like UTAS, a really expensive, well-funded organisation whose Vice-Chancellor gets paid over $1 million. We're giving UTAS $1,200 for read and write and publish events, which obviously are not just Hobart residents, $15,000 for Nipaluna listening station, and I could go on. But we can't say, on one hand, we acknowledge the cost of living crisis. We can't say what a great job we're doing, and then have these things in the background that really completely undermine the seriousness of that. Which brings me back to the core services focus. So that's where I come at this from. There are good things in the budget. I'm glad to see the $300,000, I think it is, for the aquatic centre roof and the screws that need to be replaced. But we have core services we need to be focusing on. Footpaths, and I'll have a question later around our liability and the sort of payouts we're paying there. We need to be maintaining our footpaths, our infrastructure, our parks and playgrounds, and really focusing on doing that core stuff and doing it really well. And we need to look at other councils and compare ourselves and not just pat ourselves on the back that what we're doing is brilliant. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Lohberger.
I just had a question for the staff, if that's okay. It's about a proposal from a couple of years ago for segregated bathrooms in council facilities. I was just wondering, I seem to recall at the time that the cost was estimated at around $1 million for the Doon Kennedy pool. I just wanted to confirm with someone that was true, that a couple of years ago we did have a proposal to introduce segregated change rooms to Doon Kennedy amongst other places, and that it was approximately $1 million suggestion.
Might need to take it on notice, but unless somebody knows. Yeah, I'm sorry, it seems as though they have to be taken on notice, Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to congratulate the finance team, particularly Mike Reynolds, Michelle, Lara with rates for grabbing this debt monster by the nettle, and we've really turned this boat around, and I know it hasn't been easy, and to be congratulated for that. That being said, we shouldn't be resting on our laurels, I don't think, and now we've got momentum, the boat's been turned around. Let's really drive this home and aim to get this debt down to zero in quick succession. I mean, what a fantastic honour that would be for this council to be able to stand up and say we have zero debt, and what a signal that would be sending out to the broader community. I'd caution elected members not to get too excited. I've heard in the last couple of meetings where, we're now in surplus, let's spend some extra money here and there. We've still got that $30-odd million in debt to pay down, and I'd really like to see that we just take a deep breath here, and we shouldn't look at this year's performance in isolation. And it's one thing to say too, and it's admirable to say that we've got our rates at a very low rate, but I tell you now, in other years our rates have been more than a lot of other councils, so we shouldn't look at too much of that in isolation. The amalgamation issue is something we've really got to take a good hard look at it. We just cannot sustain the expenditure on replicating 29 businesses in Tasmania to pay for what it's just out of control. You wouldn't see Bunnings have 29 Bunnings stores in Tasmania. It's just madness, the duplication of resources, assets and labour. I congratulate the CEO too for benchmarking. And that really does put picture in the frame. It really does contextualise for us how we are performing against other people. And that to me is something we should always be doing. Further to what Councillor Elliott said too, it's when you break it down, I think it works out at $1,000 extra per ratepayer we're paying in Hobart per population, or an average 2 people a house, 2.5, whatever it is. That's another $2,000 for every house in Hobart that we're paying extra compared to a house in Launceston. And that's something we've really got to have a good hard look at. with that. We've got to be reminded consistently, or consistently ask for a dashboard that we get at these monthly meetings, just to say, hey, this is our debt, this is what we're down to, and this is where we're going. And I just think we've got to, just like we look at our bank balances, we've got to be refreshed regularly as to where our efforts have been there. But I think with the workforce too, that's the big one too that stands out. We can't fill half these positions. Amalgamation would solve a lot of that, as I've mentioned before, and that's where we are. This sticks out like a sore thumb when you look at all our benchmark figures. But all in all, I congratulate the team for doing that. We're heading in the right direction, but there is still a lot of work to be done. Thank you.
Any further discussion? There being none.
I've got a question. Oh, sorry.
Can I just foreshadow a motion?
Yes.
That the budget be revisited based on a 2% increase to rates and charges and return to the council in July 2025, just in case this doesn't pass. Foreshadowed motion.
Councillor Harvey.
Lord Mayor, I just wanted to focus quickly on the arts and culture that we do provide a lot of grants for. Do we have any idea what the return is? What was the return on Dark Mofo? I think it was in the order of, 60 million or something? Yeah. Just off the top of your head, anyone got a...
Do you have the data on... I think there was also some data in our grants review about the returns.
Through you, Lord Mayor, apparently it's around 50 million return for the Dark Mofo investment.
And that's just that festival. Then we have Mona, the other summer festivals. We have all sorts of art activities happening all the time. Festival of Voices is happening at the moment. There's 105 choirs in Hobart. How much do we give to that?
Festival of Voices grant.
60, 70,000? So what a great investment that is.
Is that right? 70,000? Yeah.
So we support the arts and culture in Hobart because it's important. What a boring city it would be if we didn't support the arts and culture. So as a component of the budget, I think it's a really important element of the budget. It would be a really cold and dark place if we didn't have these sorts of activities happening all year round in Hobart. Wooden Boat Festival pulls a huge crowd. So these other small arts grants also provide incentive and a little bit of livelihood for some of these artists to continue their work. In other countries, states and federal national governments provide incentives for artists to be professional artists. They don't have to work in the bar or as baristas to do their art, and people appreciate their art. They've got a requirement to present a certain body of art. But I think arts and culture is really important to all cities, and cities that do it successfully also become very successful cities in attracting visitors who are inclined to come and see the arts and culture of various cities. So I find it a bit awkward to hear that we should be cutting all these little tiny grants to people that do interesting things. But I'm pleased with the budget. Another element of the budget, there's always been this desire to have zero debt. And could you just explain what this debt is? And I'll explain it myself. Like, you have that intergenerational debt is really important. Why should the ratepayers today pay off all of something that will be used by future generations of people? Is that part of the explanation of why we have a certain level of debt, even though it'd be nice to have no debt? But why should I pay for things that will be used by future generations? Am I on the right path here? Through you, Lord Mayor?
Yes, you are, Councillor.
Thank you. So, again, that's something we need to understand, what that debt does, what the impact and what the benefit of having good debt versus bad debt. Stadium, for example, potentially is very bad debt. But us having debt to have purchased strategic bits of land that people will be using for generations to come is very good debt in my mind. There was a third point I'd like to emphasise, but I've forgotten what it is at the moment, so I might bring that back as a question.
Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just on consideration over the last few minutes about the last question that I asked about the Queen's Domain Facility Upgrade Fund, noting that it's the highest value fund in the reserve fund's balance sheet forecast except for Macrobies Gully landfill rehabilitation, which we obviously have a significant amount of work to do at Macrobies in the future. But it seems that we budgeted in 24-25 for that fund to be $2.4 million at the end of this financial year. And in fact, because so many people are parking up there every day, that's now...
Sorry, Councillor Posselt, you've spoken.
I haven't spoken. I only asked questions.
Oh.
$2.85 million, which is an additional $400,000 to what we projected in the forecast, in the budget estimates last time around, and that our estimates this year are $400,000 more than what we achieved, so up to $3.2 million. Is it possible, and I'm probably looking towards CEO or legal officer, for us to allocate those two projects that I specified this evening to be funded from that program while we review the conditions that are attached to that fund? They seem very limited conditions in which we can actually spend that money, and it just seems to be going up and up and up with no one spending any money. So can we make that decision this evening?
Through you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for the question. I don't believe we would be able to make that decision tonight to change the allocation of the funds. It's very specific about where those domain parking funds need to be spent. So at this stage, I would say no. If there was to be a change, it would require a change to that particular council decision for that to occur. This is one of the pitfalls of hypothecation.
Thank you, CEO. Just to clarify, would a majority vote of council not be sufficient to overturn that policy for these items?
Through you, Lord Mayor, no is the response I'm getting for that. You need an absolute majority, and we would need to get qualified advice on it as well.
Could have potentially been raised through the various workshops, Councillor Posselt, but there might be an opportunity to get further advice on the...
If I may respond to that, Lord Mayor, this was raised at the Domain Athletics Centre workshop.
Further discussion? Any further comments or discussion?
I have a question, Lord Mayor. Who can answer it? Can someone answer how much money we're putting into the stadium, please?
CEO. We're putting in nothing.
At this stage.
There's nothing budgeted for the stadium.
Okay. And the other question in arts and culture, events is in arts and culture, of course, isn't it?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I will...
No further...
Yeah, Alderman Zuko.
Yeah, Lord Mayor, I'm actually going to support the foreshadowed motion. Why? Because I've been around this chamber quite a number of times and I've seen quite a number of rate rises which have caused this council to be one of the highest rated councils across the state. I've voted against quite a number of budgets over the years for those reasons. Yes.
Going to be consistent.
I'm going to be consistent because, you know, I understand, you know, it was stated about the arts and culture grants. I've always supported events more so that bring in big money into this city, and will continue to do so. Unfortunately, there's no stadium and there's no bad debt on the stadium because we're putting zero in. We might be as taxpayers putting it in, but we're not doing it as ratepayers. The comparison that was given in regards to Launceston, and this council has over the years constantly stated, oh look, we've looked at the city of X and the city of Y and the state of here and overseas, and we want to make comparisons. Well, that was one of the best comparisons that we could ever have regarding the high rates that this city has. And mind you, I'm a ratepayer in other municipalities and also municipalities in Victoria and interstate. And I've got to say, we are one of the highest rated. Why? Because we like to go and spend on things that I consider not core business. And I stood on that platform in 22 and stood on those platforms in previous years. I, as well, fully agree and have been pushing for nearly 15 to 18 years for amalgamations, but I don't consider them amalgamations. I consider a total restructure of local government. The reason why we need a restructure of local government is talked about AI. We're still living in the horse and cart era of local government. 29 councils across a state in which technology now, in a spur of a moment, we can actually bring up what's happening across the state. The reason why we had so many councils in the first place many years ago, which have been restructured, is because the communication factors of getting from one place to another. Now, in this day and age, 29 councils is far beyond a joke. And I want to sort of reflect on the city of L'Aquila, because we like to compare. That's a larger city than the city of Hobart. And the last I looked, its workforce, and I'm not attacking the workforce, but its workforce was about a third of what the Hobart City Council was. I just find it extraordinary that we want to just continually fund projects that are really not our core business to do so. We've actually had and I don't support the changes in the rate base. I didn't support it when we implemented it, and I still don't support it. I've always been a firm believer of land tax based. This council's never had the appetite to go down that path, and that's the best path of going down, and I don't support the current stand, especially where the commercial sector has been slugged, and we don't realise how important the commercial sector is in the city of Hobart and the Greater Hobart. I honestly cannot support the 3.5% rate rise, especially when we go out and use funds to fund a bikeway out of emergency funds. I just found that extraordinary. The other thing is, what we need to also look at is a review of our assets, and then have a look at our assets, and maybe we should do a catalogue review of our assets. I believe that was asked for about 3 years ago and still hasn't happened, but I'd like to see that. I'll support the foreshadowed motion. I will not support this motion.
Further discussion, Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I wasn't going to speak, but I am compelled to make a few observations. Firstly, with regards to the 3.5% rise that we have now proposing and wanting to vote for, has been discussed and debated quite thoroughly over many weeks and months. At no point in time did I ever hear an alternative to say 3.5 is not what I'm going to support. I want a 2% rise, and here are the reasons for it. A logical, rational arguments presented that would have convinced me to say, yes, I will vote for the 2% foreshadowed motion, at no point in time. So at this juncture, to be making these statements without any alternative proposal that I can see, that I can then intelligently vote, is lacking. It is unfortunately if it is such a good thing, then it is not presented in a paper, in an argument that I can vote for. Point number two, we have mentioned about the 29 councils, etc., etc. It is my understanding that that is not our jurisdiction. It's outside our jurisdiction. There have been community consultations, community responses. The state government have taken that into account, and the majority of the people, the community members, have opposed it. And the state government, it is my understanding, and I stand corrected, that they don't want to go down that path. But we don't have that power in the local government to say, let's reduce it. We can work together with our other city neighbors, as it were, and we have got that in pipeline. I remember 18 months ago, we made this suggestion that we should work together more closely, so there is no duplication, or if you can share resources with the Glenorchy City Council. So, that is my understanding, and I'm all for amalgamation, but that is not in our jurisdiction, in our power to do that. It is my understanding. Point number three, I don't know if I heard it correctly, but this fluffy woke stuff, if I am not misquoting, and I stand again corrected if those were not the words used. But if that refers to the arts and culture, when I first came here about 40 years ago, you didn't have the same extent of multiculturalism. Today, this Hobart is a very different Hobart. There is a lot more different races, ethnic groups, and there's a greater multiculturalism. And now, for the last 5 or 6 years, you have Diwali, which was never heard of. When I first came here nearly 40 years ago, we met in the homes and had our Diwali. But it's a very different ballgame today for Hobart as a city. And we recognize that. We want to support it. We want to celebrate it. And diversity is good for this place. And so all what I am saying is that it is important for us to say, yes, we fund the big events where we have the Dark Mofo, we have Taste of Tasmania, etc. But all these other small communities where they are not able to fund themselves, it is wise, and it is, I think, as a city, for us to help support financially so we can, as a city, celebrate these things. To say this is not our priority, it is not a core thing, I tend to disagree with that. And then the final observation that I want to make here is this. We all have debts. I borrowed quite a lot of money when I bought my first house, but it was calculated risk. I took the debt, but I knew that over a period of time I would pay it. Similarly, the states take debt, local governments take debt, and we do that. And when we borrowed that money to buy something, it was a worthwhile cause. It was quite okay for that particular council to borrow and then to pay over a period of time. And so I don't see anything wrong with it, but it is how we manage our debt and pay, and we are on the right track to deal with this. I mean, I can go on, but that is not the issue here today. The issue here and the motions in front of us is to vote for the budget, and I quite support it, and I think the staff on the whole, having given us the opportunity, taken through step by step as to what they were doing for us, asking us constantly, are there other options you want to suggest? None of us came up with anything. And today we want to suggest something else. Thank you very much.
I think it might have been Councillor Posselt up first.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just threw you a question to Alderman Zuko related to his speech. He referenced a town, and I didn't quite hear the pronunciation or where it was. I was just wondering what town it was and is...
Our sister city in Italy.
Sorry?
Our sister city in Italy.
Italy, right.
Our sister city.
Councillor Kelly.
I'll just clarify a point through a question regarding what Councillor Dutta has said. Is it true that the state government encourages voluntary amalgamations and sharing of strategic services with the council? So we are in a position we could voluntarily amalgamate with Glenorchy. We don't need the state government to do that?
I see you might have a view on that.
Thank you, through you, Lord Mayor. Councillor, we will look for opportunities where services may potentially be provided with other councils, exploring. I know, for example, the information technology is one area that we're looking to share our knowledge and expertise and partner up with other councils where it is actually possible.
Yeah, I don't think you quite understood my question with respect but we have the ability to merge if we want to. Councillor Duta's saying we don't. It's out of our jurisdiction. The words he said, councillors fairly said if councillors want to merge, they can do that. I'd just like to clarify that point.
Look, through you, Chair, this was discussed at length through the Future of Local Government framework. My understanding is you need the Minister to sign off. The two councils could put a proposal to the Minister, but ultimately they would need to sign off, and I think he's put a couple of other checks and balances on it around the process. But it's not a unilateral decision.
Right, no, so we can do that. And secondly, just to point, I think that some excellent examples were offered to save money, amalgamation being one of them. Thank you.
I have a question through the appropriate officer can answer it. Did the budget go through workshops?
It did.
Can council, can workshops make decisions?
Through you, Lord Mayor. No, there's no decisions made in regard to the budget at those workshops.
Thank you very much.
Question, Lord Mayor. Can alternative proposals be suggested at the workshop, but decisions not made?
Correct. Yes, that's right.
Thank you.
So just to repeat what I said in my opening statement, there were 4 workshops and 2 planning days where there were briefings provided and discussion, but no decisions made in those meetings.
Supplementary question, just like Councillor Basalt, who sought certain things to be added to the budget. Were there certain things at those workshops to be removed from the budget? If anyone can recall.
CEO or...
Through you, Lord Mayor, subject to correction from the CFO, but I don't recall anything being removed from the budget.
I recall the debate.
Councillor Posselt.
Sorry, can I just clarify what I sought to do through you, Chair? I was just referencing Alderman Suko's question that I sought to have things added to the budget, and I'm just wondering what he's referring to.
No, I think we're getting a bit too much into back and forth, but yeah, I don't...
Sorry, Lord Mayor, an inference was made about something I did, and I don't know what the inference is, but it's making an assertion that I influenced the budget somehow.
Happy to answer that.
No, I think we'll just leave it for now, thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I would support the foreshadowed. There's been a lot of stuff that's been raised in the debate so far, and hopefully sort of add to the general consensus and help us in all coming to a decision. I think there's some... You're never going to get it right. You've got 100 different competing interests. The council's involved in a lot of very good activity, and coming to a determination of how you expend limited funds is a difficult process. And staff are put in a very unenviable position, and I guess at a very high level, us as the representatives of the community are there to give that guidance and workshop these items and chat about stuff. And yes, some of the workshops are looking at individual items. Sometimes when we're debating individual proposals, there's a reason on all those motions there's that cost element line. We sign off on something. What is the cost? The council decides to do something, there is cost involved and often ongoing cost. And then when it comes to assembling the budget, council staff are sort of said, well, we need to account for, the ongoing costs of infrastructure trial or something. And so all these things do add up, and sometimes you do need to sit back and go, well, why is it that Hobart, to provide the level of service at which we have, is $1,000 more per person? To anyone from afar looking in, you'd think, well, Hobart gets the benefit of all the commercial rates in buildings. If anything, they should be lower. We get all this extra revenue. Admittedly, we do have some extra costs and expense with being the capital city and providing services for a lot of people that don't necessarily reside in our municipality. But I think sometimes that question of what should the percentage be in a rate rise, us as a governance body provide those sort of guardrails, if you like, and here's the scope at which council officers need to compile their budget and make the decisions and expectations. And we just cannot provide everything for everyone. That said, there are some great activities that we do fund. Councillor Harvey mentioned Mona. What a brilliant example. We spend, I think someone said 70,000 or something, but we spend a relatively small proportion of resource to help activate a project that has a huge community benefit. People have often remarked to me, though, that Mona itself, if Hobart City Council was managing planning up at Derwent and where it is, probably wouldn't have got approved. We'll never know, I guess. But thank you, Glenorchy, for signing off on the Mona Museum. Look, there's a lot of good in this budget, but one of the aspects of this role is we are the community's representative in this chamber, but we're also often the voice back to the community. And sometimes I think, well, if we're approving a budget for next year, we know that cost of living is tough. We know that Hobart ratepayers are already paying a very high rate base amount per capita. What are the tough decisions that I'm going to be selling that we collectively are going to be having to explain back to the community? What services are just not feasible in this economic climate? What is it that next week we're going to have to go back to the community and say, we just weren't able to do this, everyone's budgets are under so much pressure. This is something that we are cutting. This is a service that we're not able to deliver next year because, frankly, we just don't have the budget to do it. And I am struggling. I'm struggling to understand what a tough message is, and I actually think in this economic climate, it needed to be a tough message budget. I hear far more from people who can't pay their water bill, can't pay their rates bill, can't pay their rent bill, which of course rates often contribute towards. And I appreciate a lot of council staff are listening to this, and I go back, we can't fund everything for everyone, but my concern of this budget is we perhaps haven't quite gone hard enough. And it is difficult. It is very difficult. A lot of these things are sort of set in stone in their programs that start and produce a lot of benefit. But I do wonder this one, if there is an element of we haven't quite been tough enough. That said, like it's been referenced before, it is turning around. We're definitely in a better place now than we were a few years ago. And so, not everything is black and white. There's some very good things in this. I would support the foreshadowed, but I do just worry about that. What is it that tomorrow morning I have to wake up, if this budget passes tonight, and say to the community, I've got some bad news for you? That's my position. Thank you.
Councillor Kitsos.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I think that this is actually a responsible budget. I think it's a strategic budget that maintains our core services, invests in our future and responds to community priorities, all while limiting the rates increase to 3.5%. So that's my perspective, that I think that this budget has achieved a huge amount while limiting the rates increase to 3.5%. I think that's something to actually be very proud of. I think that it's reflective of the real financial pressures that councils face, but also the maturity of our planning, that we're able to balance this fiscal prudence with social and environmental investment. I'm pleased to see climate action clearly embedded, from transitioning our fleet to electric vehicles to setting up the groundwork for post-landfill Hobart. I also support the continuation of the differential rate system, particularly the rating disincentives for short stay and vacant residential properties, because we must do everything we can to protect our housing stock. Equally important to Hobart is the arts. We've heard this discussed around the table tonight, but I don't think the importance of the arts, the culture, our festivals and our events can be understated to what it means to Tasmania, to Hobart, and as a capital city. This is how we draw our tourists to our island, and it has many, many flow-on effects. I had the joy of opening the Festival of Voices this week, and this festival brings so much joy to our city. It activates and enlivens our spaces in a time that is very quiet. Dark Mofo's finished, it's cold, it's dark. It's a festival that brings in international, national and local artists to perform, as well as attracts over 30,000 people to the audiences, which is a really large number of people to come and watch choirs, choral performances and artists perform. In my mind, this budget reflects good governance, responsiveness and strategic discipline. So thank you to everyone who's put it together. Thank you to the councillors who have contributed their opinions over the last couple of months. I'd like to endorse this plan and get on with delivering it for our city tonight.
Alderman Bloomfield.
I just have 3 questions. And that was, this period, what was the CPI?
Sorry, CPI for Hobart?
Thank you, through you, Lord Mayor. I believe the latest CPI at the March quarter is 1.4%.
For the year though? I meant for the year.
It's for the year to March, yes.
So what did the wages increase by? What percentage?
Lord Mayor, we had a recent wage agreement that was ratified by staff in December last year, and there was a 3% wage increase there, plus a 0.5% superannuation increase.
And what proportion of rates is wages?
Lord Mayor, 43%.
Further discussion? Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. First of all, I want to thank the staff for their tireless efforts into producing this particular budget, which I really am delighted to that it is in front of us. I'm a little bit confused by some of the commentary that has gone around the table, and I do thank Alderman Bloomfield for her final questions, that 43% of the rates go towards staff in terms of their wages, and obviously from my understanding that's our people. Our rates are going to our people. Our rates are going to the workers who produce the beautiful city that we all live in, the beautiful things that happen in the parks, the beautiful things that happen in and around our city, from free events to arts to culture, activities, things for kids, for our seniors, for our youth. That's our people, and that's what our rates are going towards. The other thing I'm a little bit confused about is trying to make a false equivalency between Launceston and Hobart, when we have to try and understand that the rates come from the property values. If we look, for example, at the recent median cost, I think it was from CoreLogic, they actually did some data on the median prices. In Hobart, it's 658,180, and the median cost of houses in Launceston is 541,201. That's a difference of 117,000. Okay, but why is that relevant? Well, it's relevant because these rates are actually decided upon the property value. Council currently raises revenue for the vast majority of its services through the capital value rating system. So the rates are based on property values, and therefore they're a property tax. Generally, the Act expects that the higher the value of the property, the higher the rates to be paid. Well, I just outlined why we have those differences in rates between what was categorised in Launceston and here in Hobart. So I almost see that as a false equivalency. For the average Hobart resident ratepayer, as the Lord Mayor outlined, there'll be an extra $1.35 per week, which is about a $70 yearly increase. So why is this the way that the rates are valued? How is it calculated? We actually use the property values as the foundation. We identify how much is needed to collect in rates and charges. Council calculates the total amount required to fund waste management services, food organics, garden organics collection services, stormwater removal services, the state government fire levy and the state government landfill levy, and leaving the balance required for general rates. It's not just a figure that's popped out of the sky. It's calculated and it's on a formula. And the formula is the valuation, or the capital value, times the rate in the dollar, the differential rate. So the rate in the dollar for each land use is then multiplied by the value as I've just outlined. So these are specific ways that the rates have actually been arrived at. It's not just a figure that we pulled out of the sky. So I want to thank the staff once again for your efforts in coming to this conclusion. We did have over, 4 workshops, 2 planning days to discuss these ideas, to put forward something that we may want to change, we may want to suggest as an alternative to the rates increase that's been put forward today. I don't recall in those workshops or in those planning days any difference to what has been proposed here on the basis of the calculation. According to under section 89A of the Act, Council has the 3 choices as well of the value of the land upon which these current rates and charges have been applied. So I want to thank the staff. I want to thank all of those councillors and elected members, aldermen that have contributed to this budget, and I commend it. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor.
Thank you.
Elliott.
I just need to ask a pretty fundamental question, if that's okay. The process for forming the rates, is it correct that the council decides how much money it needs? The council forms its budget, and then that amount, that dollar figure, is applied across the ratepayers. So the council can decide how much money it wants, how big of a pool it wants, and then that is applied across the ratepayers now based on capital value. So is that correct? Yes. Yes. So it's not. So it's not based. We don't get X number of. The budget figure comes first, and then that's applied. It's not houses per house, and then that tallies up. It's budget first. Yeah. So the council. So number isn't pulled out of the sky. It's formed as a budget. Yeah. Thank you.
Just a question. Are the rates the amount of rates pulled out of the sky, or is it a particular formula that we apply?
Mr Reynolds?
No, we do apply formulas to our calculations.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, I might just say a few words as well. Just in response to some of the debate. Look, I do think local government and their rates do get a lot of scrutiny. I think they're more obvious to people because they turn up in a bill rather than sort of being added to things you buy at the supermarket or being taken out of your salary. But when we look at the local government sector, I mean, I think across the board, and it's very easy to compare cities, but every city is different and every city has different circumstances. But we do know that all local governments are incredibly efficient. They're the most efficient level of government. They collect less than 4% of the total taxation take in the country, and yet they're having to manage 20 to 30% of the infrastructure in their communities. And in the city of Hobart, we are certainly responsible for some of the most important infrastructure in our city, and not just the most important, the most valuable to the state. For example, the city of Hobart owns and manages and maintains the 2 most popular tourist destinations in the state, Salamanca Market and Kunyani Mount Wellington. Now, we get nothing from the state for that, for the maintenance of those really important tourist locations, important for locals as well, but very important for people even wanting to come to Hobart, the maintenance of those that infrastructure. There's also our sporting facilities, and I think there's been some analysis done, but I think we've received like less than $1 million or so dollars in the last decade towards sporting facilities in Hobart from the state government. Whereas you look at places like Launceston and the north of the state, they're getting significant amounts, many millions, for new sporting facilities. And we own and manage and maintain the state's most premier athletics centre. We've got this whole Southern Region's netball centre. We've got the whole Southern Region's aquatic centre, which is open, you know, so many hours of the week and has 600,000 people visiting it and using it every year from all over the Southern Region. So these all add to our responsibilities, and they add to our the management costs of the city. We could say, oh, it's not our responsibility, you know, we'll just close the aquatic centre and wait for the state government to put in some funding to it, but we don't, because we know we're an important part of the providing services, not just for our ratepayers, but for people right throughout the southern region. You know, I just don't think it's always helpful to just cherry pick certain cities out of the air and pinpoint very specific parts of the story of those cities in trying to determine what's best for our city. You know, I look at Launceston and I look at Hobart, and all of our economic indicators are doing really well in comparison to Launceston in terms of growth and employment and population, and you know, in terms of the vibrancy of the city as well. I think, you know, there's a lot of things are going really well in Hobart, and part of that is connected to the investment that we put into the events in our city. I think about 50% of the Hobart economy is actually the economic activity in Hobart is linked to the events, and we're not the only funder of those events, but we're an important part of funding those events, and they can be the small creative events as well as the bigger ones. Geelong has, I think about 8% of their revenue comes from state grants, whereas we're getting less than 2% of our revenue from state grants. So they also have a rates capped environment, which is again different to Tasmania. So, you know, there's always differences in cities, and we can't just make decisions for our city on those sort of superficial levels. So for all of those reasons, I think, as others have said, we've got a really good balance here. It is a budget where we have had to trim things. We don't have a lot of new assets being built this year. We're focusing on maintaining existing assets, but I do commend the budget to elected members. So I will put that. All those in favour say aye.
Hold on. We have a question.
Sorry. Yeah.
I'm just going to confirm, because I was listening to your speech very closely, but my understanding is, a question for you to be appropriate officer, was we have just received an $8 million funding injection into City of Hobart-owned sporting infrastructure. Have we not, up of a Domain Tennis Centre?
Federal government, we haven't received it, no. Yes, but thanks.
Look, Lord Mayor, I understand the offer's been made, yes.
So I was talking about state government grants to sporting facilities, but yeah, you're right. That's a new thing from the federal government. Very much welcomed. Okay, so I will put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. No. Show of hands. All those in favour.
Councillor Dutta, Councillor Passelt, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Harvey, the Deputy and the Mayor.
And against?
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Coates, Councillor Kelly.
That's carried. Okay, we will now move on to the draft waste management strategy. Would someone like to move that? Moved by Councillor Kitsos, seconded by Councillor Lohberger. Discussion on this waste management strategy? Any discussion?
Yes, Lord Mayor. Look, I'm really pleased with this, and I especially like seeing the coordination of the actions with regard to the waste hierarchy. I think that's really easy to see and to understand. So, yeah, I'm really pleased with the actions you've got here, all 64 of them. Makes sense. It'll be a great task to work your way through these. I will pick up on a couple of them, though. The organics recovery is especially important. We all know the implications of organics going into landfill and methane into the future. So I'm pleased to see that there's some good actions coming to try and reduce the amount of organics in our wheelie bins and ending up in landfill. So that's a really great initiative. Action 3, the single-use plastics review. I've been waiting for that to turn up because I'm especially keen to see how we can improve the single-use plastics elimination, basically. I'm interested in how we continue to reduce the use of single-use plastics. But also, I'm also keen to see how much fananny-whacking has been going on in the industry, the gaming of certain things. And here's a really great example of an excellent fananny-whack. This is a 1,050 ml bowl, plastic, which is acceptable. So they gamed it by the bylaw says you can't have over, less than 1 litre is covered. So they increased the size of this bowl so they could continue to use this particular plastic bowl. So I'm hoping the review brings up all these sort of opportunities. And I think we need to have a, how would I describe it, a no gaming it clause. So like plastic bags got gamed when plastic bag bans were going on. They banned, say, the 35 micron, whatever it was, and people introduced bags thicker and thinner than that and got around that plastic bag ban. So I'm hopeful that we can look at all the options to stop people gaming the single-use plastic stuff, and what other things could we potentially include into the banned plastics. And as we know, all of us weekly consume about the equivalent of our swipe card in plastic, nanoplastics that enter us through the food chain, through the air we breathe, all of that. So I'd like to think of over time we can start to reduce our exposure to plastics, and also the PFAS. 85% of us have got PFAS in us. So the implications of all of these contaminations are starting to become clear. There's implications for all sorts of health impacts. A lot more research is being done on these things. So I'd like to think that that's also an element in the upstream approach to how we deal with plastics. There's also, I'm not a fan of the soft plastics recovery scheme. I think that's a bit of a scam. It failed as Red Cycle when they found all of the plastics that have been collected sitting in warehouses all across Melbourne. There's now another scheme. We're encouraging people to bring in their soft plastics. I'd hate to think we spend a lot of money on that because it's not actually solving a problem. There's about 1.2 million tonnes of soft plastics put onto the market every year, and we manage to recycle about 9 to 10% of that. So, it's a small amount we recycle, and we're never going to get to the target of recycling at all because the volume of plastics is increasing. The volume put onto the market increases faster than we can recycle any of it. But anyway, I'm keen to see where we go with that. The other one is number 34, action number 34, which is polystyrene. And a number of years ago, I had the good fortune to sit in on all the APCO meetings when they were working out the approach to plastics and packaging waste across Australia. And I was at a table with Coca-Cola, Woolworths, Domino's Pizza, Biopack, and the bloke that makes plastic bottles out of Botany Bay from fracked gas from the fields of New South Wales, pumped 1,600 kilometres into Botany Bay to make plastic bottles. And our butcher's paper, and this is quite exciting sitting there with the executives from all these companies, our butcher's paper only had one line on it because we couldn't agree on very much at all, except we all hated polystyrene. And our butcher's paper said, get rid of polystyrene, ban it. So I don't want to see us, moving into the recycling polystyrene. I'd like to see us working towards advocating for a national phase out and a ban on polystyrene. It's a really horrible material to recycle. I'm also keen with Action 52 to look at, could I have another 2 minutes please?
Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Posselt. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously.
Action 52, the solar wind farm potential of McRoby's Gully, once it's closed down, combining those energy opportunities with the already existing methane capture to produce even more energy for the City of Hobart could be a really viable option in the future. So I'm glad we're investigating that proposal. What else did I have? I think that's it, but I really commend the draft waste management strategy I think it's a really good, strong document. The actions in it, all 64 of them, I think are really good opportunities to reduce waste. And we're going to get out of landfill by 2030. And we have options now that we're looking at with regard to working with Lutana, Copping into the future. So I'm pleased about that as well.
Further discussion? Councillor Coates.
Look, thank you. Yeah, look, like a lot of these big strategy documents, there's a lot of really good stuff and initiatives that have been sort of identified at this preliminary stage. Huge number of those are sort of practical steps and build on work that's already been done or been done by either council in the past or other councils or other organisations where I think we can have learnings, and no doubt in putting together the draft waste management strategy our staff have consulted about. I guess from my perspective, I guess I'd just like to sort of point elected members as we consider this to the actual officers' report. Financial viability, obviously there's no numbers in there because those numbers need to be informed as part of this. So following the endorsement, the design and development of the implementation plan will sort of happen. And that's where they've said they're going to need additional FTE resources. Obviously, Nat, they're pointing out in 5.3 that consultants will need to be engaged as part of this process to deliver on the action items. Specifically, of course, the landfill options analysis. That will require significant external consultants, I imagine. But the other thing is the sections, so recommendations 60 to 64, which talk about strategic direction, governance and management. And a lot of those, 4 of those 5 items are for initial action between 2024 and 2026, 2024, must be financial year. I'll highlight number 60. So options for future governance arrangements around delivery of waste services, including participation in joint authorities. So, for me, that's very critical. If there's a joint authority doing some of this work, we don't just want to duplicate it. What are the governance arrangements? What's the reporting coming back? As co-chair of the Place Committee, we want this to be a healthy place to live in, Hobart. I look forward to hearing and a lot of these initiatives and what is it we're going to do, how much is it going to cost, can we do it, can we afford it, what's the likelihood, all that sort of nitty-gritty in the weeds decision making. 61, identify, catalogue and understand services we're currently doing. 62, develop a financial strategy to understand this. So look, in endorsing this plan tonight, what we're really doing is we're saying there's a lot more work to be done before we can sort of get in and start actioning a lot of these initiatives. But just the identifying of them is a sort of good start. I guess I'm looking forward to that sort of governance aspect and understanding, we just cannot do, well, I doubt we will be able to achieve and manage to get all of these things done. And perhaps some of them, what we might find is they're being done by others, or there's an avenue where we can work with others to get the same achievement and outcome. So, look, this is a really good example, I think, following on from that budget discussion, of where we sort of need to put our sort of opportunities hat on and look at what is it that we're best placed to do and resource, what is it that we have the resources to be able to do efficiently ourselves, and what is it perhaps we can partner and work with others to achieve. But look, like Councillor Harvey said, there's a lot of good in this. I do think that in endorsing this tonight, it's then up to us as elected members, as a governance group, to really very much keep on top of it. There's not a huge amount in there in terms of how we're going to have regular reporting and how we're going to have, keep it across it. But I have faith in the officers to inform us where there is decisions to be made, to work with the committees and governance structure that we have. And I know many members of many of the committees would be very keen to explore some of these initiatives. And ultimately, I think as we get towards 2030, I think it was 600 kilos down from whatever the big target is, 900. Hopefully by the time 2030 rocks around, we can look back and go, we did a really good job. So,
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Just a question, please. Is there an intention this document would be professionally printed? I was just noticing the notes sections at the bottom.
Discussion? Sorry. Response to that, Ms.
Thank you very much.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? I would like to move to amendments, so I'm going to leave the chair and ask Deputy Lord Mayor to take over and ask that they did send them to the officers. Okay, so these are, I guess, with this strategy, I do feel that unlike the budget where we had the 4 workshops and the 2 planning days, I did feel a little bit caught out by the waste strategy in terms of we discussed it went out for consultation and it basically has come back to this meeting and we haven't had another workshop. And these particular amendments, I guess, are things that I think, based on a consultation with a range of people, are important for us to put into this strategy. And I wouldn't do it if I thought there was another opportunity to do it, but I know the last thing the officers want are further motions on waste. Like, this should be the compendium of everything we're going to cover in the waste sector in the coming 5 or more years. And so therefore I think I did feel compelled that it's important to put these 2 extra actions in. So just to go through each of them. So the first one, oh sorry, I need a seconder for my amendment. Councillor Posselt, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Posselt.
So the second one is, the first one is explore regulatory powers to introduce a bylaw to prevent commercial food and organic waste going to landfill by 2030. So this is really just an exploration of steps we can take to prevent the disposal of large volumes of commercial food and organic waste going into the landfill. We are clearly doing a lot of work to reduce food and organics from landfill, but most of our work at the moment is in the residential space. And commercial food waste refers to food that's been discarded by businesses, including restaurants, grocery stores, etc. And this is a really significant issue in Australia and in Hobart. And it's estimated that food businesses throw away 30% of their food, and a lot of food waste happens before food is even sold or served. Things like the overproduction, spoilage, and these sort of things lead to very significant amounts of waste, food waste going into landfill, and we're not really tackling it, I don't think, adequately through the draft plan. So I'm proposing not that we do something specific, but that we explore those powers, and that would still come back to council before we took any further steps. So that's the first one. The second one is a really significant issue that I've stumbled across in the last year, and it is around asking that we require refrigerated appliances, fridges, freezers, air conditioners, to be degassed prior to disposal at Macrobies and Lutana waste management facilities, and that we investigate council providing this service of the degassing. Now, this is more of a climate change issue, but it's connected to our waste sector, so it has to go into our waste management strategy because it's something that we control through our waste disposal services. So after Australia signed the Montreal Protocol, regulations were put into place to comply with the commitments and release the ozone-depleting substances and refrigerants. And so in most Australian states, they actually got on with the job of regulating both CFCs, which are banned in Australia, but also other harmful refrigerant gases like hydrofluorocarbons, which are still in use, and also other very high impact refrigerants. So refrigerant gases have a really high global warming potential, many thousands of times higher than carbon dioxide. In fact, hydrofluorocarbons have a global warming potential about 14,000 or 15,000 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So they are a significant contributor to climate change. So currently in Tasmania, there is no state government legislation requiring landfill owners and operators to ensure that all refrigerators and freezers are degassed before disposal. Every other Australian state... can I ask for an extra 3 minutes, please?
That's been by Councillor Postel, seconded by Councillor Harvey. Thank you. All those in favour? All those against? Carried. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. So all other Australian states have legislation in place that requires the degassing of refrigerators and freezers and air conditioning units before they're disposed of to prevent the release of these harmful refrigerant gases into the atmosphere. And in most cases, this legislation was actually introduced decades ago. So when the Montreal Protocol was introduced, so in 2014 in New South Wales, 2018 in Victoria, 2011 in Queensland, 2010 in South Australia, 2004 in Western Australia. So Tasmania has not done this, and so basically these gases are not being properly dealt with. Now, we can of course continue to lobby the Tasmanian government and our partners, but in the meantime, if we're serious about reducing our emissions, and most of our emissions as an organisation come from the waste sector, we can take a step and work towards asking that anything that comes into our waste facilities have been degassed. I mean, these services are available. There are operators in Tasmania that provide these services to reduce these gases and remove them from escaping and creating problems. But we currently don't require it at our waste facilities, and I think, given we're signing off on a document that's going to last the test of time, I think it's really important that we do put this in as an action into our strategy. Now, obviously, nothing's going to happen on either of these items in detail until we get further advice back from our staff, but I felt it was important to bring these to the attention of the Council and ask that they be included as amendments into this strategy.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So we have an amendment before us, so if anybody would like to speak to the amendment... sorry, I think Councillor Coates was up before you, Councillor Alderman Zurko. Thank you, Councillor Coates.
Thank you. I appreciate the sentiment of where you're coming from, and in reading those two amendments, I can understand at a very broad level what they're trying to do, and those outcomes seem meritorious. I'm just a little bit concerned as to the position I now find myself in. It's a pretty extensive draft waste management report that the council staff have spent a lot of time and effort putting in their resources. Those two weren't recommendations that have come through. We don't now have the opportunity to get council advice for those two recommendations and understanding, and I guess I hark back to my comments before as to I appreciate costs and resource, but the fact that they've sent us 60-something recommendations and neither of those two are in them would indicate to me that they're not necessarily the highest priority or not necessarily considered by the professionals who have provided us this draft report. Notwithstanding that, we also received a 48-page consultation report. 70% were in favour of the strategy as it is before us. You're never going to go 100%, but 70% is decent. They got 20 detailed written submissions. I've quickly been looking through this, having just had a few minutes from that, but nowhere in that engagement was there a call for us to investigate bylaws, as best I can work out. And also when it comes to the regasification refrigerator, there's a lot of stuff in that engagement report talking about e-waste. Maybe some people meant freezers and fridges, I'm not sure, but if they've put together a draft, they've gone out to communication and the overwhelming feedback hasn't come back and said, we should really investigate bylaws, I'm very hazardous right at the end to then sort of add that in over the top. You're right though, it is a long-term strategy that's before us. Perhaps if these amendments are something that was overlooked or wasn't explored, or because it wasn't in the consultation paper, people didn't consider bringing them back. But I would personally be in favour of perhaps we can just defer this by 4 weeks. I mean, 4 weeks within scope of or a month, sorry, within the scope of a 5-year strategy isn't much. I'd rather get the strategy right than sort of has to be done on the 30th of June. There are a few red flags to me. Like, I guess the first question would be, why is it that no one submitted a consultation saying we need to go down a bylaw path? I guess, where did these come from? What's the provenance? Is it community members who've contacted you and so you've done it? But then why were those community members not comfortable in doing the consultation process? We're in a position now where, at a very high level, I've got 60-something recommendations in front of me, plus these 2 now. And it's hard to support these 2 when we've only had a few minutes to consider them. And I can appreciate and read them and understand from your speech, from the speech just before, the intended purpose of them. But I guess I always worry about those unintended consequences, the resourcing, the costs, what are the processes, asking officers to go and explore as part of the motion when that wasn't part of their proposed strategy. And so, look, I'm very interested to hear the contribution from other members around this. But, if other members think maybe it's meritorious to delay this by a little bit, to explore these options, to sort of have a more thorough advice, then I'd be intrigued to hear that. But, that was my initial thinking.
Councillor Coates, were you intending on putting that as a procedural motion to defer, or are you happy to leave it for now?
I think it's genuinely one of those ones where we should listen to the views around the table.
Alderman Zuko.
I just have a question, if someone can answer it. The Lord Mayor made a statement that other states have got legislation. The question I would like to ask is it state legislation? Thank you.
Any further comments? Yes, Alderman Bloomfield.
I guess this leans more into a prior workshop that we participated in only not that long ago regarding things about how this meeting works or doesn't work. One of the big issues I have are amendments where we actually don't get the feedback from staff, and this is a classic case of that. To be honest, on reading this straight away, I feel very much in favour. I think they're really great ideas, but I think good governance would suggest that we should actually have the feedback also from professional staff that actually can give us more of a context and view that we are not misstepping in any way that we might otherwise not understand, because it is, it's 5 minutes' time, we've got to vote on this. So I would be in favour of a deferral, simply to make sure that everything that we're looking here is going to be exactly as we intend.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I just have some questions, please, because I must admit I don't know much about some of this stuff, and I'm not sure who it would be to, but on the fridge degassing, what's the current situation when a fridge turns up at the tip?
Thank you.
At the moment, we have stopped receiving any gas appliances of any nature at McRoby's. Back in November, we investigated this area, and we were receiving around 350-ish appliances a year. We've now stopped. One of the things that we're looking to do is follow up and ensure that our comms adequately communicates that, but we don't accept gas appliances in freezers.
So that would be fridges and freezers?
And air conditioners.
Air conditioners too. Okay. And what is and I've tried to find it myself and I couldn't in the time, but what's the cost of the degassing process?
Depending on the size of the device, $46 to $120 per item.
And that would be the cost to an individual ratepayer at their home to get someone to do it?
Yeah, or they would have to take it to a qualified degassing.
Okay. I'm worried that that's a big cost for a lot of people, and I'm worried it would just end up leading to a lot of dumping instead because of that significant barrier. This is actually something that I think the council should do. I would definitely not support a policy where it was the onus was on the individuals to do this work, because for that dumping reason and the barrier. I would support it be something that the council pays for. I would class this as core business. But like I said, I don't know much about this, but my absolutely no to putting it on the council, on the individual. I'm worried about us. That makes me very nervous, the turning away of appliances that might be happening. I would be very frustrated if I was a ratepayer and I turned up at the tip and was told to take my fridge or freezer after you've lugged it onto the back of a trailer and got a babysitter and hurt yourself doing it. I would not be impressed by that at all. So I hope our comms on that is very strong, because I find that troubling. So that's on item 3. On item 2, I want to understand, to make sure I've understood it correctly. So if a bylaw was to be implemented, would that make it illegal, in inverted commas, for commercial food waste to go into the red bin? Is that correct?
Into the
the
yeah,
landfill bin.
Into landfill, but more often than not, commercial operators will be having their own contractor who's bringing it in, not through they're still using our landfill, but not necessarily using our bins.
So it would be a reasonably easy process for them to comply with. It wouldn't be, okay, all right. Okay. I haven't decided how I will go on this, but most definitely not to the putting the onus on the individual with the refrigeration. Very concerned about appliances being turned away, and my questions around number 2 is the difficulty for the commercial food people, and I'm not a big fan, you might have noticed, on over-regulation and I like individual freedom, but given all of the questions I have, I would support deferment. I completely understand where the Lord Mayor's coming from in terms of if you've got some things you feel strongly about, then I support people's right to bring those into the chamber. But then at the same time, I think it is hard being put on the spot with only a few minutes to understand what the proposals are. But I would definitely be open to exploring them and approving them at a later meeting.
Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Deputy. Officers explore regulatory power, so I'm happy with that. Doesn't mean we're locking anything in, it means to explore. But just focusing on that first one, could I ask a question through you, Deputy? How many commercial food businesses already have opted into a food waste collection?
Through you, Deputy, I'd have to take it on notice to know exactly the figure.
But there is a figure?
There is. Businesses can opt in.
Okay. And second question, how is the food waste dehydration trial going down at Salamanca? And also at Mather's House, because that's another option that could be considered for tackling commercial food waste.
So at Salamanca, the trial has ended. They had a lot of challenges given the amount of food waste that the businesses were producing and the amount of space to create that trial and test that. At Mather's House, though, the dehydrator is running very successfully. The kitchen there collects all of the food scraps. They're taken downstairs, they're placed in the machine, dehydrated, and then the material that comes out is taken directly by the Still Gardening community group there and used in the gardening program.
Okay. So hello. Hi. So there are other alternatives as well to explore how we can get more organics out of commercial waste, out of the commercial waste stream. And some of the advantages of doing this, I don't know if you've ever noticed the rats in Hobart, but all sort of food strip areas have a bit of a rat problem. And a lot of that's to do with how we manage organic waste in bins. And if your bins don't shut, you're providing a smorgasbord for rats. If the bins get knocked over, it's another smorgasbord for rats. So these rats are, living it up on the food waste that comes out of these cafes and restaurants and things. So we do need a commercial organic waste collection service that's effective. what that looks like. It could be a combination of a boutique service. It could be food dehydrators like we're trialling in Hobart, and I'd like to see the outcome of the Tas Hospitality, who did the trial down at Salamanca, as well as some data on the Mather's House food dehydrator as well. But I'm supportive of looking at all the options, and there's less commercial food waste than there is domestic food waste through the FOGO system. There's also the opportunity domestic is, I think, the higher priority, but food waste from businesses is also a significant component of waste going to landfill. So there's options to get rid of that. There's the opt-in FOGO system for businesses, but how do they accommodate bins when they've got limited space? There's also another range of small dehydrators that are about the same size as a commercial washing machine, which could also be installed in cafes as a trial. They're different ones to the commercial one that, say, Mather's House has. They're still commercial, but they're a much more convenient size, and that'll take your food waste and dehydrate it down to about 10% by volume. And they don't need plumbing as well. So I'm supportive of this, but its officers explore regulatory powers, but also the other options that we could potentially expand is what I'd like to include as well. So I'm not going to amend it, but you get the drift. Yep.
There's 61 businesses in the commercial space.
Okay, but potentially we could have 600 of them if there was a system that could assist them and it was affordable. And that affordability comes from understanding what's the cost of all that organics going to landfill and producing methane over the next 100 years. So there's got to be some formulas in there that make this a doable thing. So that one covered off. With the refrigerant stuff, I think it's really important that these gases aren't put into the atmosphere. And if we're not taking them because we don't want to have to deal with... Can I have another 2 minutes, please?
Yes, moved by Councillor Posselt, seconded by Alderman Bloomfield. All those in favour?
Aye.
All those against? Carried unanimously. Tim?
Through you, Chair. So the fridges that would have come to us, where are they going at the moment? Have we got any idea? Are they going to another recycler?
Yeah, they are, and our toll booth staff are providing that information to the community. They're able to go to a number of different recyclers, and in Glenorchy they still accept them because they have on-site staff that are trained in degassing.
Oh, okay, so there are other alternatives. So the gases aren't being just released into the atmosphere willy-nilly. So they're
absolutely not.
Yeah, okay. And is that illegal to release gas into the atmosphere?
Yes.
Okay. So there are some options for getting around this, but I'd like to think that council not requires, but council report on degassing of fridges. I'd just like to see some little bit of data rather than make it compulsory if there's other options. So, Lord Mayor, I really appreciate the intent of this, but I think there's options already that I'd like to understand. And if we're giving that advice already, then that's really good. So that part 3, I reckon we could probably...
Oh,
go on.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the advice that I received is from September.
Can only one of you please stand? Thanks.
So the advice I received from September was that there's obviously been a change that hasn't been reflected in the strategy, but I think what I'm proposing as an amendment actually should be in the strategy, and it basically reflects what we're doing now, except for that council investigate providing a degassing service, which we could still do that if that's what Glenorchy is now doing. So it feels like my amendment's sort of now reflecting our current practice, except the bit about that we investigate providing these services ourselves.
Just on that, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Maybe I'll ask for
Standing,
some.
but sitting.
Yes, sorry. I'll just ask for some qualified advice just around that. There seems to be some discussion, and Councillor Elliott and Councillor Posselt, Coates has made some commentary. Would you be able to just give us some advice?
Thank you, Deputy. So look, on point 2, from a procedural point, I see no issue with that in the sense of making a decision tonight, because it is simply asking officers to explore a certain thing and potentially then bring a report back to council. On point 3, though, I think that runs fairly close to section 65, qualified advice, and 65(2), where you need advice before you make a decision of a council requiring it. So I think you've got 2 options. You can either defer it and we get the advice and we come back, as has been suggested, or on point 3 you could simply, if the Lord Mayor so chose to amend it tonight, it could be council explores requiring ... so that so it mirrors point 2, so that we would bring an advice back to the chamber on how that could work. Because even on point 3 itself, I've heard some discussion tonight on what the model would be. Is it a user model? Is it the council doing it? All these things I think need to be caught by some advice and a report.
Thank you, Mr Young. Councillor Harvey, would you like to continue?
I think that's the best way forward here. I don't want to defer anything. I'm happy for these things. I keep moving. So I'm happy to have that, Lord Mayor, if you're prepared to do both of those. I'm prepared to support these.
Okay. So that's just the one thing, which is adding the words council explores requiring the refrigerated appliances.
Yeah, so it presently reads council requires. What I'm proposing, if you were to agree, would be council explores requiring, and then the rest of it.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, even though it seems we're sort of doing it now anyway. But it'd be good to formalise it.
Yeah, to know what we're doing. I'm interested in this topic.
Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Deputy. I'll be brief on this one. I think I was the seconder. No, I wasn't. That's all right. I will point out that point 2 or action item 2 in the strategy says that we should be looking at organics and how to divert them from landfill into a different waste stream. And I think that all that the point that you've raised, Lord Mayor, does is strengthen that and give officers a little bit of direction that we're willing to use a little bit of stick approach and not just carrots. Organic waste, everyone. But, in addition to that, goal 2 in the strategy, divert organic waste from general waste by 2030 is what's written here. And I would also point out that early in the document, it also talks about leadership and the importance of our council in taking a leadership role when it comes to waste. When it comes to the degassing of appliances, clearly we're behind the times. Clearly the state is very behind the times if all the other states have done it, which is not particularly surprising here in Tasmania, because we do find these little niche pieces of legislation all the time that are 20 years behind. The expression that Tasmania is 20 years behind the mainland often is...
Councillor Harvey.
I don't think that's accurate. We heard that you have to degas fridges.
Sorry, what's the point of order?
The information's incorrect about degassing.
We're
20 years behind the rest of the country in that we don't degas our appliances, but that's not correct. So I'm correcting the record, and I'll just verify.
That's not a point of order, though. Thank you. No, it's not a point of order. Thank you. Please continue, Councillor.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. My understanding is that that is not the case, that the legislation does not reflect a mandated requirement, hence why we were receiving about 300 fridges a year that were gassed and not knowing what to do with them. So it's always good. We've a number of times said that we should lead in this council, and sometimes we need to hold the state's hand and be the actual true leaders of progress and what's best for our environment around us. So very happy to pursue this. I will just ask a question to finish, if that's all right through you, Lord Mayor. It seems to have come to light that Glenorchy offer a degassing service through their TIB. As part of learning that, did officers have a look at their model and implementing it here at Macrobies as part of waste transfer?
Pine, are you able to answer that? Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. We did, and resourcing is the main reason that we don't offer that service at this point. We have a lean staff at McRobies, and it requires accreditation to be able to do that, and then somewhere on site to do it safely.
Any further comments? Yes, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of matters. I note that I take Councillor Elliott's point, getting to the tip with freezer, loading it on, then told going away. I think our website still reflects that we do take them.
$35.
That's why I said I think it's important that I follow up on the comms to make sure.
So, yeah, you can take recycling places taken for nothing at the moment, and a lot of people just dump them at the door there on weekends and all that out at Recycle, I know. And so, yeah, I'd encourage us. I mean, if Glenorchy Tip can do this, surely we can. I would also propose looking at some sort of fee. We do that with mattresses as well. If you take a mattress without the inner springs taken out, you pay extra compared to splitting the two. So a small charge to offset some of that extra cost I would think appropriate, and I'd request that that was sort of looked at as a potential option. Also too, the figure that up to 30% of waste, I struggle to believe that. I do not know of any business that could possibly survive in the food industry this day and age by having up to 30% of waste in the garbage with that. So I just think we've got to get our facts a little bit right there first before we do that. But in principle, it's a noble proposal, and I support that with this slight amendment to say that we have a good look with the options there. Thank you.
Any further comments? Councillor Dutta.
Thank you. I commend the proposals suggested by the Lord Mayor. And I think it's very clear to me, the number one recommendation is simply saying that we endorse this management strategy that becomes a guide for us. And I have no problems with that, and it's quite clear. Number two, again, for me, it's simply saying the officers will explore these powers, and we're not making any decisions tonight. And if we were to make decisions, then I would, again, as I said previously, I would want some advice from council staff to say this is the evidence and therefore we're making the decision. But it's not a decision-making thing, it's simply exploring and then coming back to us. And third, with the change now that council explores requiring, again, I think both of them are very clear and I would support that. Thank you very much.
Any further comments? No, so just so everybody's clear, the final point 3 will now read Council explores requiring that refrigerated appliances and the rest that's written there. Yes, okay, so I'll put point number 2 and 3 of those amendments. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against?
Aye.
By show of hands, please, all those in favour.
Councillor Dutta, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Coates, Councillor Passelt, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Harvey, the Mayor and the Deputy.
And those against?
Alderman Zuko.
That amendment is carried. Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion on the motion as amended, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. No. Show of hands, all those in favour?
In favour, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Coates, Councillor Passelt, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Harvey, the Deputy Lord Mayor and Lord Mayor.
And against?
Alderman Zuko.
Carried. Thank you. Moving on now to item 12, the Biodiversity Action Plan 2025 to 2030. Would someone like to move this? Moved by Councillor Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Lohberger. I think he had his hand up first. Any discussion on this strategy?
Yeah, thanks, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I'm really pleased with this plan. I think it's very good. I just want to highlight a couple of things. There's a number of references to invasive species, which I think is important. Cats, dogs, deer, mallards, rabbits. But there isn't any reference to introduced bird species. And I just wanted to know why, but also why there's no reference to pollinators as well. Is there any particular reason we haven't focused on pollinators or bird species like rainbow lorikeets, blackbirds, kookaburras?
Through you, Lord Mayor. Just to keep the document concise, we haven't focused on everything. We've picked key items and bigger programs that we're delivering rather than talk about everything that would be a document.
Yeah, sure, okay. Yep, and what about insects?
Same. I agree that that's an area that needs further work, but it's not something that we're delivering currently as part of our program, so it's not identified in this biodiversity action plan.
Yep, okay. Yep. All right, thank you. But I just wanted to highlight and give a shout out to a couple of organisations that are doing work in this particular space. And I'll start off with the Pacific Black Duck Conservation Group. So I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're working on removing hybrid ducks around Hobart. Mallards are mentioned in the plan, but no specific reference to this particular group that's been catching and euthanasing hybrid ducks. In New Zealand, the Pacific black duck's almost extinct because it's hybridised with other ducks like the mallard duck. And they've produced a really lovely book that City of Hobart participated in as well. Ducks of Tasmania. So it's a really lovely book. If you haven't had, there's John. You have a copy, John. There you go. No charge. A beer maybe. But there's other things as well that are really important to highlight. There's another group called the Rainbow Lorikeet Management Group, and they do a great job catching rainbow lorikeets and, sadly euthanasing them as well, because rainbow lorikeets are an introduced species and they're having an impact on local birds. They're interbreeding with the musk lorikeet. So we've got to be careful we don't lose that particular species. They also compete for habitat. So I'd like to give a shout out to the musk lorikeet management group who are doing a good job. These things can be invisible. People wouldn't have realised the damage that hybrid ducks could cause to the Pacific black duck, and over time we would have lost that species of duck. So I'm really pleased that the Pacific Black Duck Conservation Group exists to tackle this problem, and that also the Rainbow Lorikeet Management Group exists as well. There's also another group which people have probably heard of, which is the Northern Pacific Sea Star Cleanup Group, and they've been going for a couple of years now, and potentially they could have an impact. If they keep going for a couple of decades, they could have an impact on the Pacific Sea Star. And every month they go out and they clean up Pacific Sea Stars from different places around the Derwent, and a lot of their work's done in the Hobart area. Fantastic group, enthusiastic. They have divers and snorkelers, shore crew that clean up that particular species. And that also means it's protecting the habitat of the spotted handfish, as well as giving other aquatic species an opportunity to recolonise areas where the sea star's been removed. So I'll give a shout out to them as well. Another important group of people that are working to protect our biodiversity are the 15 Hobart bush care groups who do an amazing job. Every weekend there's 2 or 3 groups, possibly more, working from 12 till 10 till 2 or 12 till 4 or whatever it is. But they do a great job removing weeds, revegetating, looking after threatened species, including the Daphne laurel, which is a species that we might be able to eradicate if the program continues. It's a particular horribly invasive species that it might be the first species that we could ever have eradicated. So that's an ongoing program. Dogs, deer, mallards, really challenging the deer thing. I'd hate to think they start to expand into our area, so I'm pleased to see that there's a deer management component to this. Another one I'd like to focus on for a bit is cat management. So we all know that cats are responsible for the extinction of have contributed significantly to the extinction of a number of species in Australia. Australia has the worst record for extinctions, a really terrible record for extinctions. And what I'm interested in is, how do we address the domestic cat problem roaming in our reserves? So I'd like to move just a little amendment that the council reserves be declared cat management areas under the Cat Management Act 2009. This would mean that homeowners would be responsible for not letting their cats roam into our reserves and munch on bandicoots, other insects, lizards. So, 2 minutes, please.
I move by Councillor Posselt, second by Deputy Lord Mayor. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously.
I think there's no doubt. I think we all understand that cats are, really fierce predators, and they predate a lot of our wildlife. I'd like to think that we can encourage responsible cat ownership by declaring all of our reserves cat-free. And it's not a big onerous process to do that. It's just advertising in the paper a couple of times, I think, and then those areas are declared. Kingston has a number of reserves, prohibited areas, which are Boronia Beach Reserve, Coffee Creek Reserve, Algona Reserve, Huntingfield Reserve, Public Beaches Coastal Reserves, Peter Murrell, Conningham Nature Recreation Area, South Bruny National Park, Snugtier Nature Recreation Area. And it's hard to enforce. I know that. That's always been the obstacle why we haven't done this before. But the fact is, it's a symbolic it's almost a symbolic gesture to say to the population, don't let your cats roam into the reserves because there's a chance something might happen to your cat. It could be captured, probably returned, but you never know. So I'm hoping we can get this onto the books now. There is a big section in the report about cats, but it doesn't talk about doing this. So I'm hopeful tonight we can just go straight to looking at making all our reserves cat protection areas where we don't allow cats to roam, and the people who live in those areas take further responsibility for their cats and not let them roam. So I'm hoping I get a bit of support for that amendment.
So first of all, I'd need a seconder for the amendment, Councillor Kitsos, and the CEO's just asked to provide a staff member to provide some advice on. No, don't we need the qualified officer? I'm just seeing if there's an officer who can advise. Sometimes we don't have to have the advice in writing, do we? It's always.
Through you, Lord Mayor. From just a cat management perspective, no issues with doing this. I think it's a logical next step. There is some actions identified in the plan that were really aimed around getting community on board, and it's really important that before some of these steps are taken, that community are brought along for that process. So that's kind of what we've focused on, with the idea that we can implement these changes that can sometimes cause a little bit of, for right or wrong, objection within the community. So we thought it really important to focus on that community aspect as part of the plan, the actions identified.
And I really appreciate that comment, but we've been doing that for many years. Education around cat containment, microchipping, desexing, and sadly a number of years ago when there was a review to the Cat Management Act, the state government balked at introducing mandatory confinement. So we haven't got that, and probably we won't ever get that. So I think, while I support your initiatives, which are in the plan here, I also think that it's just time to bite the bullet and send that message to the community that please keep your cats out of our reserves. So I'd like to push on with the amendment.
Can I just ask a question too, actually, of the officer? I mean, what other steps do we have to take to go before we declared bushland areas under the Cat Management Act?
Sorry, through you, Lord Mayor. I'd have to read the Act and again, just to refresh and check. But it is, as far as I understand, it's council declaring it and the advertising period for the community.
Sorry, and was there, Councillor Harvey read out some places that have declared as
prohibited areas.
Cat management areas. What happened with those? Have they been declared by councils?
They have, yeah. Kimberley Council have done a lot more work in this space than City of Hobart.
still got 2 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm hopeful that this will get up tonight because I think it's a good initiative. Other councils have done it, not just in Kingborough but around the state as well, and it's not an onerous thing to do. It's basically advertising that these areas will become cat management areas, and there you go. And then we start to publicise it. We can use it as part of the education campaign, which I'm excited about, going forward. But I can tell you the number of animals that are impacted by both domestic and feral cats is enormous. And if we're talking about protecting species like bandicoots, I can assure you that bandicoots get munched by cats. And you can see, I was looking at 2 dead bandicoots. It was in Glenorchy just recently. And there's no marks on them because the fine teeth of a cat just pierces them and you can hardly see through the fur. But when you see dead bandicoots and there's no guts and gore, there's a high priority that a cat just, munched it for fun. And I'm sick of seeing those things, and I see them all, well, not all the time, but regularly. And I'd like to think we can start to address it by having this motion, this amendment passed tonight.
Oh, sorry. So I'll just ask a question of the CEO, whether if this amendment passes tonight, would we get a report back that would actually formalise this policy decision that is being flagged in this report?
Look, I might just answer that a slightly different way, Lord Mayor. What's been proposed is not actually an amendment because it's inconsistent with the officer advice. The second bit, as we've heard from the officer up the back, is there is and I'm not in the detail on it, a statutory process for how that declaration would be made that you need to set qualified advice on. And a further part that you will need qualified advice on will be community feedback, which we've also just heard there hasn't been any. So where I think we get to is you've got 2 options tonight. You could either amend point 4 in a similar manner to how I proposed for the Lord Mayor's previous amendment around that council explores declaring this, or you defer it or pull it out and we bring it back as a standalone report, because I don't think you can actually lawfully make that decision tonight, Councillor Harvey.
Sadly, Lord Mayor, that bureaucratic answer is this is doomed because this has come to council before and the answer is always no. We do not want to do this because there's too much of an onus on compliance.
Yep.
So this gets knocked off.
Well, anyway.
We can't do it tonight, we will never do it.
Okay, I think Councillor Posselt is standing up and then Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm a bit concerned by the advice that we keep getting that we cannot do anything ever without having a council report, which is how I read a lot of the decisions that are being made. This is a decision-making table, and we've heard that in Kingborough they've done this through the council successfully. I don't necessarily need... I understand that there's charters that say that we have to have community engagement as part of the role of council. I'm not sure that there's anything that says we need to have community engagement on every single decision the council makes, and I certainly don't think that we do that. And I am equally concerned as Councillor Harvey that things like this seem to be perpetually on the back burner because they seem too hard, or because, we've heard from officers, really well-intentioned officers tonight that, we want to make kind of baby steps towards this resolution. But we have the elected decision makers of this council saying, we don't think that we need to make baby steps. We think that we are ready as a community and as a council to leap in and go and do it. And I think that we wind up having this situation where everything takes a protracted time and sometimes multiple terms of council to actually get to the final recommendation of yes or no to do something. And I would raise that it's not actually democratic if these decisions take so long that a whole new body of elected members are required to implement the decision of the previous elected member body. How are we doing our jobs as elected members that are meant to be making decisions for now and tomorrow if we're consistently hamstrung and told we can't do that until there's a report? I personally feel like there's enough evidence and enough advice tonight from our expert officers that this can be done. We seem to be all of the understanding that there's an advertising period in which we need to advertise these changes, and then it's implemented. And yes, there will be a cost burden of some sort in terms of compliance. There'll be an advertising cost burden, of course, but I just don't think that these decisions need to have the degree of qualified advice that we're consistently told they do, and I think that we can make this decision tonight. And I support Councillor Harvey in bringing it, and I support what he said about, this has been brought up multiple times and we're still not there. And I question why, if we've had these discussions over and over and over. Councillor Harvey, you've been here since 2006, is that right? 2007, and I'm sure this has been an item of interest for you in that time. If you can't do it in 20 years, there's something broken in the system. So I'm happy to support this amendment as it's written, and I'll see where the debate takes us.
Further discussion, Councillor Coates.
Look, thank you. I find myself sort of agreeing with Councillor Purcell. There have been people pursuing this for 20 years. There must be very good reasons why it hasn't been implemented, and I'd love to understand what those roadblocks are. In a lot of these areas, it is difficult. And correct, look, I understand. I think Bruny Island's got some pretty strong cat management for that ecosystem. But look, speaking on the amendment, this is very much 11th hour. Let's add in an extra section. But, this just sets off all my governance red flags. The item that is before us, before this amendment, tells me that a comprehensive review of the inaugural Biodiversity Action Plan was completed following a review cycle. That included the assessment of the achievements, the implementation of the challenges from 2019-2014, the identification of biodiversity threats and management issues, and consultation with internal stakeholders and subject matter experts. Now, that's the report that I was happy to support tonight, which is the new 5-year plan that's in front of us. That's been put together with that stakeholders, subject matter experts, addressing the challenges and opportunities from the previous 5 years, and it's come up with their recommendations. Now, what we have in this amendment is this sort of at the last minute, let's also do this cat management step. Now, I'm not an expert in this space, but if we're going to make decisions in that space, I'd love to know what the roadblocks are, what the issues are, what's the best position and where we find us. And it may well be that we go down the path of declaring a cat management area, but to sort of have it as an amendment at the 11th hour, that review didn't recommend this step. It's not in the original report. The subject matter experts and internal stakeholders that were consulted as part of this, but that's not a recommendation that was put towards us when the officers were putting this report in. I would also note that, and I appreciate that, cats are both wonderful creatures, and for what it's worth, I have two, which we do keep inside, but I can appreciate they do cause a lot of biodiversity issues, and obviously feral cats are a huge concern. This report tells me that the threatened species strategy for the state is currently under review by NRE TAS. I mean, that's an avenue where we can go down and have a statewide approach to this thing. We also have a governance structure in this council, and look, I'm looking forward to hearing from the co-chairs of the committee, but we've got the Biodiversity Committee, which has as its objective provide input to council to support both the development and the implementation of a strategy, and it calls out the biodiversity strategy. I'd love to hear the feedback. This is a challenge statement. What are we going to do when it comes to declaring cat management areas? We've got the governance structure in place. They can explore this question and provide the input to us as a council. That's exactly what the objective, I'm reading it here, objective of the Climate Sustainability and Biodiversity Committee. Its objective is to provide advice to us as a council in consultation with the community, as community members on it, when it comes to the development and implementation of this biodiversity strategy. I mean, this is a classic case of where we have the structures in place to explore these challenging questions and community issues. we should avail ourselves of those and don't be afraid of coming to council and saying, we've explored this, the community are on board or not, or you know, this will be contentious or not. We've gone through and you know, frankly, come to us with the body of evidence and a recommendation. All that I have before us is that we had a pretty thorough 5-year plan. That 5-year plan, by the way, had a governance body, which is this committee sitting on top of it. Out of all of that, having had it reviewed, gone to subject matter experts, gone to internal consultation, they haven't come up with this as a recommendation, and instead it gets added on at the very last minute. And I'm sort of being asked to support it. And do I then, you know, if I vote against it for governance reasons, do I then get attacked? I mean, what is the objective here? I can understand that for 20 years people have been trying to put these cat management areas in place, but, you know, there is a process around this for a reason. We do have these governance structures to be used, and this is a classic example where we should use them. I mean, if we were to pass this tonight without the amendment, there is nothing stopping the committee that we've set up to look at the development and implementation of this plan, the new one, to investigate this issue. Discuss it. Come up with ideas. Give advice to council. I'll be the first one to line up and vote for something, but I want it to go through a process where members of the community have had their chance to have a say. You know, I'd love to hear what 10 Limes' view is on doing this.
They support it.
I would love to. Well, I'd love to hear that, but I don't. Where are they? Where's Noel? You know, they haven't got a chance. We've just had an amendment dropped 5 minutes ago. I find myself, if this amendment gets up, I just can't vote for the item. It's poor governance, poor decision making. It circumvents the existing.
Lord Mayor.
Councillor Coates, yes.
We're here to respect each other and debate and all that, and I'm not being disrespectful here, but there was twice there while you two were having a conversation that there's been interruption in his debate.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Councillor. Thanks.
So we're you know. Thank you.
Point of order. Councillor Harvey, if you could refrain from interrupting Councillor Coates. Councillor Coates, how long have you got now?
I'm literally about to finish. So, look, again, it's one of those ones I can completely agree and understand where my fellow councillor is coming from proposing this amendment, but I think, unfortunately, in this case, the process by which it's come to us has led to me not being able to support it. Thank you.
Okay, can I just interrupt for a moment? So the CEO would like to recommend that there is a process under the Cat Management Act that councils do need to go through. This is certainly something that we are empowered to do under the Cat Management Act, but there is a process that needs to be followed. Councillor Harvey, it may be better for you to indicate your amendment to read something like that council starts the process of and then making its reserves cat management areas.
I might just walk us through it quickly if that's okay.
Yeah.
So look, under the Cat Management Act, what we're talking about tonight is a declaration under section 19 or 20. What's relevant to us tonight is section 21, and I quote verbatim, proposal for a council declaration. A council that proposes, note the future tense, to make a declaration under 19 or 20 in relation to an area of land is to publish a public notice. Then it goes through specifying a whole heap of things. So the Act requires you to front end, this is where I was coming with the qualified advice, a series of things you have to do under the Act before you can then make a decision to declare something under section 19 or 20. So put another way, as I tried to put more delicately earlier in the night, you cannot lawfully make that decision tonight because you haven't done the requirements under the Act to get you to that point.
It says under the Cat Management Act 2009.
Yes, and I'm not going to get into the debate, but section 21 of the Act requires a series of things to happen before a council can determine and agree that parts or all of their reserves are caught by the Act.
So, Councillor Harvey, I'm just wondering whether you would...
It looks like I'm going to have to change it, otherwise my colleague over here will be forced to vote against the entire plan. So I shall put those key words at the front.
So I'm just checking with Mr Young whether it would now read something like council starts the process of declaring its reserves?
What, sorry, through you, Lamette. You could, so the council commences a process as provided under Section 21 of the Cat Management Act for all. So it still gets you to the same place, Bill. We just go through the hurdle, the work, the way the Act requires it, and then that process is underway.
I'm very
Correct.
satisfied with that solution.
I can make sure it goes in. So what I'm proposing is, instead of it being all council reserves being declared, it would be that council commence a process in accordance with Section 21 of the Act to look at declaring, or something like that. To your point, Bill.
I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Is the seconder happy with that change? Okay, Councillor Lohberger.
I've just got some questions about this issue. We've heard a lot of talk about bushland reserves. I'm on the bushland reserve page. Every single park owned by the council or managed by the council appears to be marked in the same colour on the map that's on that page. So we're talking Cornelian Bay, Franklin Square, plus Knocklofty Reserve, Waterworks Reserve, Ridgeway Park. What exactly are council reserves, and what exactly does that phrase, all council reserves, encompass, and what does it not encompass? Because it seems to me that it encompasses just about everything, including our parks. But it seems to me also that the intention from Councillor Harvey is that it's the bushland reserves, which are very specific, and clearly not Cornelian Bay, for instance. I just had a question, I guess, of whether staff can clarify that, or Councillor Harvey.
Yes, the intent is council bushland reserves, but I would also include Cornelian Bay, for example. There's been a huge cat program in that area for a number of years, and most of the cats have been removed, but there are still cats in the area. I know them. There's a ginger one, and there's a black and white one. So, yes, that area would be included as well. So all reserves where we have threatened species such as bandicoots, so it's bushland reserves, and Cornelian Bay, part of that is a bushland reserve.
Councillor Lohberger.
I'm just going to struggle to vote for it at the moment when it's so wide. That's all. I'm sort of...
Not including parks, where there's swings.
Not including parks? Well, if you add in not including parks, or say bushland reserves, not including parks, it makes it a bit easier. But I can't vote for it if it's absolutely every bit of stuff that we have.
Whatever. Yep, okay.
Yep.
Take out bushland reserves is what we'll call it.
So through you, Lord Mayor, I've got it under here presently. The council commence a process under Section 21 to declare all council reserves. You want to change
bushland reserves?
You want to change that to council bushland reserves? Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion on the amendment?
Yet again, here we have a substantial amendment. I don't think any of us have actually got a copy of the Cat Management Act 2009 in front of us, so none of us have read that, so none of us know what the actual indication of the impact of this will be. And whilst I completely appreciate what the intent is, I absolutely do, we are not a fiefdom. We actually need to take the community with us. We represent them. We are not better than them. And there is also a saying I'd like to utilise here. It's called marry in haste, repent in leisure. So yet again, when we want to do this, we've literally been told the initial one was effectively, I don't know if it's appropriate to say illegal, so we've pulled it back to make it something that we could reasonably do. But still, the enormity of this sits in front of us, and I think we're voting in ignorance, and I get really concerned with that. I would like to know, for instance, what does this Cat Management Act actually mean for people whose cat ends up there? Does the cat get shot? Does it get taken to a shelter? I don't know, and we're voting on this. I was told today by a ratepayer, in fact, that there are real issues with how we deal with feral cats. I suspect that might be also under this Cat Management Act, but I've yet to get a copy of that because that happened this afternoon. And they were specifying that, in fact, it actually costs significant money to get rid of a feral cat after you've caught it yourself, but only before you've actually got a permit to do so. So we have a lot of issues with handling cats, with handling feral cats and so forth, absolutely. But I want to do this with my eyes open. I want to have good governance, and I need the community to understand that we're acting in their best interest. And how are we going to do that? Yes, it will always take time, but everything we do in council takes time because we are acting for so many people with such wide ramifications when we make a decision. So I appreciate that it's been some time coming. I absolutely do. But as I said, I fear that we are rushing in and we will have an impact possibly that we didn't intend. And honestly, the rest of this document is brilliant. So I would rather that we just simply took this away from this and then just moved with this, get it done, and then address the cat issues later in a separate motion. And I'd be happy to be part of that.
Can I just ask a clarifying question of the CEO? Under the amendment, would the commencing the process require a number of steps ahead of us, including final consideration to come back to council?
That is correct.
Can I ask a question, Lord Mayor? Is it possible to have not a foreshadowed motion, but an additional motion after this motion? Could I move this as a motion following this motion? From the foreshadowed motion. But a foreshadows only if this one is defeated. I mean, the substantial motion is defeated.
It's a bit irregular for you to do both.
Okay, well, I'll continue with the journey. Yep.
Councillor Dutta was up first, I think.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The point number 4, as it stands there, it's no longer that. It's changed quite substantially. Now, I think if we were voting on number 4 as it is, then some of us would have reservations considering the advice that was given to us. But that number 4 no longer stands as it is there on the screen. It has changed. And so my understanding is, from the advice given to us in the discussion, that under the Cat Management Act, we are going to take into consideration the provisions under Section 21. And under Section 21, the provisions say these are the requirements that we need to follow these processes in order to bring about this. Now, I have no difficulties with that because we will follow a process, the staff will do that, it'll come back to us before we make any decisions. So I'm quite happy with that, with the advice and the clarification given. Thank you.
Further discussion, Alderman Zuko.
Now, I'd just like to assist in the situation, if I may, in regards to point 4. I can't remember the exact part of the meeting procedures, but I believe that Councillor Harvey can actually move a motion because the matter is the biodiversity has been under discussion, and it's up to you whether or not you want to accept it or not. But it would have to be that a council report more likely is the way to go, but it's up to you to accept it. Look, I can look it up in a minute, but I believe that that because there's a matter in front of us, an elected member can move a motion, but it's up to you to accept it. Okay.
Sorry.
I can probably just clarify that, look, to help Councillor Harvey out here a bit. So under Section 21, it's got down here at point 3 where we have to actually consider submissions, right? And then after we've considered this, so we go out, we advertise in accordance with the Act, then we get some submissions and we consider them, and then Council then makes the declaration on under 19 or 20. So this is a two-step dance anyway. You can start it in train tonight per where we've got to on the amended proposal from Councillor Harvey. That's completely fine from a governance point of view. And then we just go through the statutory process where we will get some community feedback. We will bring that back to the chamber with officer advice and a recommendation per the Act. And hopefully it won't be another 20 years, Councillor Harvey.
Can I accept that?
Okay. Councillor Coates was up first, I think.
Just a question. Obviously, I've spoken to you, member, but the question is, like, I know with petitions we can refer. Are we able to refer that, well, I guess defer/refer to the committee?
It would probably be as part of the submission, as part of the process. Yeah. Okay.
That's okay.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
I was just going to say, if we're going to vote on it, I'll just not speak. But if it's okay, I just wanted to say I really appreciate the advice that you gave. I think it's really wonderful. It's great. Sometimes amendments pop up in the middle of a meeting. These things happen. It's part of the human condition. Thank you so much for this particular amendment and for working through it with us. And obviously it looks like it's actually a greater outcome than you intended. Because it will go through that statutory process, we'll get those submissions, that consultation, and then, it's accorded with the way that we want to govern appropriately. So thank you.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Being none, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
No.
Show of hands. All those in favour.
Councillor Dutta, Councillor Passelt, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Kelly, your hands up. Councillor Harvey, the Deputy and the Mayor.
Against.
Alderman Zurko, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Coates, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's carried, yeah.
It's carried. And so that's now as amended. I'll put the motion as amended. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
No.
Show of hands. All those in favour.
Favour, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Passelt, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Harvey, the Deputy and the Mayor.
And against?
Alderman Zurko, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Coates, Alderman Bloomfield.
Yeah, that's carried. Item 13 is the Christmas pageant, my sponsorship, moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconder for this item, Councillor Dutta. Any discussion on Myer seeking to expand their sponsorship of the Christmas pageant? Councillor Kitsos.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just a question. I'm wholly supportive of Myer expanding the sponsorship of the pageant. Just around the date. The date for this pageant is the 15th of November. Just wondering how, can we get a window of time that's appropriate to have a Christmas pageant? I just worry that if we bring it so far forward to encourage, Christmas spending and shopping, it'll be like the Christmas carols that start in October, and I'm wondering whether that's going to have a negative impact on the kind of the vibes around the pageant and the people who want to come and watch it.
Manager of Creative City is going to answer that question.
Through you, Lord Mayor, we had extensive discussion with the Christmas pageant at Myer because of Targa that's actually changed dates this year. So they're happening the 16th. Got quite a bit going on in the city. So it also is aligning with the Myers Melbourne window display, which opens the weekend before. So it's a package across both Myers activations and what's happening in Hobart City.
What was the first thing you talked about?
Targa.
Oh, do they sponsor that as well? Or
So Targa's happening in the CBD from the 16th through to the following weekend, where it's happened earlier in the year, but because they've had to change their dates, it's now in spring.
Further discussion, Councillor Passelt.
Yeah, thank you. Like Councillor Kitsos, I'm a little bit concerned that Easter hot cross buns will still be in the shops when our next Myer pageant will be held. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the last Myer pageant was in the last weekend of November last year. Is that?
It's always quite early.
Through you, Lord Mayor, I believe it was in the second or third weekend of November. The 23rd, sorry, 23rd.
Yeah, thank you. Just looking at the calendar, this would be the 29th, would be the next available weekend without Targa. I agree with Councillor Kitsos. It does seem a little So it seemed quite early to bring it forward to the weekend proposed. That's not going to stop me voting against it, but that's like still 5 or 6 weeks left in the last term, in the final term of school for kids. They're not really winding down into the Christmas spirit just yet.
Councillor Elliott.
If Maya have asked for that date, aligns with their date, they're giving us the money.
Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. How much does it cost to run the Maya pageant each year that council contributes?
Manager of Creative Cities.
Through you, Lord Mayor. So within the Christmas budget, it was $185 last financial year.
That's $185,000. And how much does Maya contribute?
Again, through you, Lord Mayor, it was $30,000. This proposes a 3-year increment of 10% each year.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So the majority of the funding comes from council, not from Maya.
That is correct. We have also proposed a 10% decrease in council funding each year.
Okay,
I have a question, Lord Mayor.
Yes.
So Maya seeks to sponsor the council event for a total of what? How much per annum? And the Hobart City Council spends
185. Is that correct?
185.
That's the total cost.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So we got a choice here. We either spend $210,000 because sorry, not 210. We either it's going to cost the council $185,000 or $155,000. So it's very simple decision to make. So if the ratepayers have got to fork out another $30,000, so be it. That means next year's rate, I'll be going at 1.999% rate increase.
Further discussion? Councillor Kelly.
Could Maya not be asked if they would adjust that?
I'll ask the manager to answer that question.
The date we're referring. We're still. It's a proposed date at this stage, so we're still negotiating.
So, yeah, look, I totally agree. It's ridiculously early. And there's all those ramifications that Councillor Posselt mentioned. So, I mean, we haven't even discussed it with Maya, so while I'm sure there'd be things. So, yeah, if we can explore that option.
It's been discussed but not finalised. So do staff want an amendment on that, or are you happy to take this as feedback from the elected members about negotiating the date?
We're happy to take feedback. It's just a tricky time of year with so many summer events starting to happen. So I think we felt the first weekend was way too early. It was really just working around Targa and a couple of other events happening in the city, and particularly looking at traffic flow, because there's quite a lot of road closures for both Targa and the pageant. So we can certainly continue to negotiate, but the second Saturday was the preferred at this stage.
Alderman Bloomfield.
The whole point of the pageant was to establish the opening of Christmas in the city, okay? And the reason why we do that is because we need to highlight to shoppers and customers that now's the time to shop for Christmas. So if we have, 1 3/4 months to get Christmas shopping happening, then my hope is, sincerely, and I think this is where the intents come from, is that we encourage them to come to town more. Because once this starts, we have all the decorations up, we have all the little mini events and different pieces that happen during the area with the Christmas carols being sung and all the different displays in the windows and so forth. All of that starts on this date, and all of this can be something that the community gets to enjoy for this period, but most importantly is to attract customers to the CBD and to get them to re-engage over that period until Christmas. So, to be honest, yes, it might be a little early, but it's always been early. It's always been around the 15th anyway. It's always clashed, for instance, with the Hue and Show. I don't know if people knew that or not, but is to always clash. And so this single week that we're arguing over simply gives the people in the CBD the opportunity to hopefully get more sales, more customers, more engagement, more enjoyment of the things that we do in that time. So I'm actually quite happy with this setup. Yes, it would be nice to have it on the 15th, as we always have. We were spoilt last year, we had it on the 24th, but that doesn't mean that it meant that the shop owners were spoilt. It meant that there was less time to get more shopping done. So that's just something to kind of look at from a different context from the small business owner. I am glad that it is a reasonably substantial sponsorship, because that is actually quite important as well. We simply need to know that value is given to this pageant, and value is effectively supplied by Myer saying it's valuable to them. So I do feel that it's not exactly all, bad news here at all. Rather, it's simply an educated decision with hopefully some really good outcomes for the small business community, which this is not just about the kids, it's about them as well. We actually need to make sure that we give the opportunities to small business. Now, this morning, as an aside, I was reading that the small business restructures are up 120%. That's a form of liquidation, for those who don't know. And also liquidations in themselves, insolvencies, are through the roof. It is extremely bad time for business. We need to be as pro-small business, medium business as possible right now. And this is a measure that's a small contribution from our city to do so.
Councillor Lohberger.
Yes, look, I just wanted to echo some of the things that Alderman Bloomfield just said. Every year the pageant comes around, and every year I'm surprised by how early it is. And then every year I remind myself that it's actually all about opening up the CBD for Christmas shopping. So you do need a significant amount of time before the actual day. Not that that stops a lot of people from doing their shopping on the very last day possible, of course. So look, I'm quite comfortable supporting this, and I'm really happy to hear that we're we're upping the amount that we require from Myer, and we're trying to drop back on ours as well. We're being responsible financially here, while still supporting a fabulous pageant. And just apropos of nothing, I've actually been in the pageant myself as a child, and yes, I was surprised even back then at how early it was, how far away from Christmas it actually was. So I don't think anything's changed. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Further discussion? There being none, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 14 is proposal for a town hall open day. Moved by Councillor Harvey, seconded by Deputy Lord Mayor. Any discussion? Councillor Kelly.
Would it be possible to have the restored heritage tram, which has storage up the storage yard there, on display at the sesquicentenary it was, and it was absolute centrepiece for the whole event, and thousands of people came to that event in 2016. I think it was 5,000, and it was just received with such great admiration from the people. The Hobart Tram and Restoration Museum Society staff it, provide all the sort of care and hand out brochures and make sure it's all good. The council can actually bring it down on their tilt tray truck, so there's very little cost involved employing contractors and all that. So it'd be a brilliant opportunity, and with the proven highlight it was at the sesquicentenary, could that be arranged?
So it's a question for the CEO, but it may need to be put as a question on notice, or that if you want to move it as an amendment, Councillor Kelly, it could be something like that this be considered with the CEO considering whether it's possible.
If that could be just put on there simply as stated.
Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Lohberger. So that would just be that the CEO consider whether there's a possibility for the trams to be incorporated as part of, or a tram to be incorporated as part of the event, considering cost and logistics or something. Does that sound acceptable?
Yeah, that's good, thanks.
Councillor Posselt.
Thank you. Just in the interest of transparency, question to Councillor Kelly through you, Lord Mayor. If Councillor Kelly can potentially elaborate on his involvement in the H-trams, just for transparency purposes only, very happy to support the tram. I got on the one in 2015, it was great.
I have, as you know, your attempted code of conduct with me on this matter, Councillor Posselt, that I am not a member of the committee, I'm just a member of the association. So, full transparency, and I take offence at you even raising that. You knew the answer, you're just trying to stir up trouble.
Okay, all right.
I asked a question.
Okay, let's not
Pathetic.
go across the table. Councillor Coates.
Look, thank you. Look, not a bad initiative. My understanding is Town Hall's reasonably open. Certainly, if anyone wants to approach me, or I understand that there's tour groups in Hobart that take people to Town Hall, and obviously down the bottom we've got sort of the more traditional stuff on display there, and it is a public building. We invest in artwork so people, when they come into this, can sort of experience it. I was saddened quite a number of years ago when we had a beautiful Oktoberfest down here at the waterfront. I'm very excited this year that Hanging Garden are again bringing that activity back. Unfortunately, it clashes. We, of course, run the Track Care initiative. Again, should we do Track Care or should we attend the Town Hall Open Day? I mean, there's a large amount of money in the schemes of things, no, but I don't know that it's necessarily something that, I think we can get. I mean, I know school groups and stuff, tour groups come already. I just wonder if this is perhaps something that we can ourselves, as members of the community and representatives, promote the opportunity for people to come and experience this building and do this without having to do a whole sort of open day. There are community events happening already on that day. I know the calendar's busy and obviously different events for different people. And I appreciate this is to try something different and have a report back at the end, but I just wonder, in this sort of cost of living environment, is this really something that's the highest of priorities? I just don't wonder if there's perhaps an alternative way of doing it. Thanks.
Alderman Bloomfield.
I've noticed there's quite a few things on offer. We've got guided tours, performances, talks, treasure and discovery hunt and so forth. I'm guessing that this is all supplied free of charge, correct? Yeah. Okay, so I guess I'd like a little bit of in between if it was possible for us to do something. Because just like the Government House, a lot of people drive past, they look at it in awe, they never think for a second they'll ever get to go in there. And then one day there's an open day and they feel like they have the right to attend, and it's actually a big deal for them. And in fact, in this last year alone, we've had a number of people come here, sit in the gallery over here, they come and ask a question, and they tell us that they've never been here before, and they're absolutely overawed with the building itself, how beautiful it is, the ballroom and all these things, and simply because they've never had that opportunity, that invitation that this actually offers us. So it is something of a generosity of spirit for us to open the doors and do this. But I do understand that $15,000 is $15,000. It is quite small comparatively to grants given to other things. So it really is not going to surprise the financials so much with a massive impact. But it would be nice perhaps that we perhaps popped in an opportunity that people participated with a gold coin donation. And that way we could collect some money and have it towards something that's important to this room. For instance, it could be something to do with tree renovation or anything. Like, do you know what I mean? That way it's not free. It does help us achieve additional goals. And it just lessens the impact of the $15,000. And I have no doubt that people would be unhappy to contribute a couple of dollars for the experience, because I think they would feel very much that they were getting the value of that.
For any further discussion on the amendment or the substantive?
Lord Mayor, I would
Councillor
support
Dutton.
this. I would support this. I think the concept of an open day is always quite entertaining, and it is inviting the public to come and see things closely and with some guidance. So because it's an open day, and as Alderman Bluefield has mentioned about the Governor's House, the same principle can be applied in here, and I think it has a lot of merit. Point number two, with regards to $15,000, I don't think it is, in the scheme of things, is a large amount. And I would not support any, $1 coin donation or whatever. I think 15,000 in the scheme of things for an open day is quite manageable, and I think it is good publicity, good marketing for the city. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, I support this as well, and I also support the tram if we can get it down here. Of course we can. And 5,000 people turning up, which is what happened in 2016, which is nearly 10 years ago. And for $15,000, I think it's money well spent. I wouldn't want to see this become a transaction with the people of Hobart by charging them a gold coin donation. I just think that's not necessary. Happy for as many people as possible to come into the town hall, have a look around. I'm happy to spend $15,000 on such a significant event. If it's every 10 years, I don't see that as an impost on the City of Hobart. Getting the tram down might add a few dollars to that, but I think the tram's beautiful, and I'd like people to be able to see that tram. I'm not going to move another amendment to bring the steamroller down. They can wait for the parade for the steamroller. Yeah, the tram is fantastic, and I hope people appreciate all the energy and work that's gone into the millions of dollars that's gone into restoring those two trams over how many decades? It's been a long journey to get those trams to that condition, and for people to be able to see them, I think is a bonus.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really like to echo the comments that have been made by Councillor Harvey, especially around the trams, and I think it would be a really wonderful addition. I don't mean to offend anybody, so I'd like to say that at the outset. I'm just wondering, just with regards to the expense of the trams, like we'd earlier just spoken about the need for Section 65 qualified advice, and just the conversation that existed before. I'm a little bit concerned about potential conflict. I'm concerned about the expense to the city of bringing the tram down. I want to know what are the specifics around the associated road closures. Are we going to need a heavy lift train? Are ratepayers going to be having to pay for this to come? And have we accounted for that in our budget? Just a whole bunch of questions. When we were talking about Section 65 advice, they're just my concerns. Thanks, Lord Mayor.
Through you, Lord Mayor. So what I've got here as the proposed amendment is that the CEO consider the possibility of a tram being incorporated into the Town Hall open day, subject to cost and logistics. So the way we've set that up is a couple of things. It is in effect, by council decision, creating a discretion for the CEO to do or not do something with consideration to the cost and logistics, and it's a matter for him whether he thinks the cost and logistics are such to make a decision under delegation there and then, or in his judgment to potentially come back to the chamber. So I'm not troubled by it from a Section 65 point of view.
Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. I'm just a little bit concerned just around the costs, and I'd like it to come back to council for us to make a decision around the cost. It doesn't have to. I'm just voicing my concern on that. Thank you.
I think the CEO will hear that concern, and I think he would understand what would be a reasonable amount and what would be an unreasonable amount. I think when we did it in 2016, it was more expensive because we closed a lane of Davey Street to allow it, but they didn't. You wouldn't necessarily have to put them out the front. You could put them out the back, which might be a different.
If I could just very briefly say that we use a council truck, a council employee, plus one perhaps, and it needs no street closures or anything to do it because it can be put onto the apron of the thing there. So absolute minimal costs.
Any further discussion? Councillor Lohberger.
Look, I'll be quick, Lord Mayor. I'm really supportive of this open day. I think open days are great. and this is a beautiful old building. Obviously, everyone here knows I got married in this building as well, so it really means a lot to me, this building. I support any efforts of the council to open it up. I know there's a lot of unusual rooms and things around as well, weird safes in walls and things, which will be really interesting. Totally support the tram being here, if we can make that happen. And I thought the gold coin thing was an interesting idea. I find at the Government House, when they do it, it's a charity doing it. So I just wondered whether we couldn't just, I don't want to add an amendment or anything, but just informally, if the CEO could take that on notice that we could potentially have a charity here rattling tins and it wouldn't affect anything. And I don't think any of the patrons would even notice it, to be honest. Anyway, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, very supportive of the officer's motion and the tram, as I said in 2016. I came and had a look at it, and it was a magnificent thing. I just wanted to give some suggestions and feedback as well, that this is an opportunity to do more than just talk about the building. It's an opportunity for us to share with people who might not otherwise engage in council business with what we're actually doing, not in terms of mechanics, but we had a great open day at Hall Saddle that had some large explainer boards about the Hall Saddle project, and I think this is an opportunity to place strategically some interpretation and information about some of the major projects that council or initiatives that council is undertaking, be that Hall Saddle, be that Battery Point Walkway. There's also an opportunity to engage quite a lot of our staff engage with face-to-face engagement at places like DeCac or in North Hobart over the structure plan, and really try to engage passers-by or people that are there for a swim. And again, this is another big opportunity, if we've got hundreds, potentially thousands of people coming to Town Hall, to have some formal engagement stations where people can come and check out the building, hear the history, jump on the tram, but also feel like they've contributed to the city's future. So I just pass that on as feedback for officers to consider.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll put the amendment first. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. That's carried. So now the motion as amended, so now includes 5 points. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Show of hands, all those in favour.
Favour. Alderman Zurko, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Posselt, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Harvey, the Deputy and the Mayor.
That's carried. So it's 7 o'clock. Oh, sorry, and no, sorry, and all those against?
Councillor Coates.
Now it's 7 o'clock, so I'm going to adjourn our meeting for the purposes of having dinner. Due back at 7:20. I'm going to reopen our meeting and move to item 15, which is the response to a petition traffic issues Wynyard Street, South Hobart. Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Posselt. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. It's carried unanimously. Item 16 is a...
Would you mind buzzing Councillor Kitsos back in for the... she had a conflict of interest for that item.
I see, yeah. We need to just press...
I'm an expert. How many times have you used that?
So item 16 is the Local Government Association of Tasmania General Meeting proposed motion. Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Lohberger. Any discussion? There being none, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no.
No.
Show of hands. All those in favour?
Favour, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Posselt, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Councillor Harvey, the Deputy and the Mayor.
And against?
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Coates, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly. Carried.
Item 17 is elected member legal costs, moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Posselt. Any discussion?
Lord Mayor, in the workshop I did ask for a copy of the original legal advice. And still haven't been provided that, or is it on my hub and I missed it?
Alderman Zuko, I have had a look for that and I speak to it in the report. Section Q appears to have not been amended any time in the recent past, noting that the broader policy's been amended in 22 and 23, I believe. So I've not been able to actually find any written advice on Section Q in regard to the lawfulness or otherwise on expenses for that section. We just have not been able to locate it.
Well, it should be there, Lord Mayor, because I remember we got legal advice at the time, so hopefully we can find it.
So, Zuko, can you identify the approximate year you think that might have been?
Lord Mayor, it was in the last... I'd say it was in the last... Nick Heath was the CEO, so it's in the period of, I would say in the last 5 years of Nick's being CEO or something like that. Just taking a plug.
Between 2013 and 2018.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'd say it was. No, after 2018 it was. No, after 2015. Sometime after 2015. Okay.
Lord Mayor, what I'll do, Alderman Zuko, is I'll work backwards with our external lawyers and see if they have a copy, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Any further discussion, Councillor Elliott?
Thank you. I've just got a couple of questions, please. Thank you for your work, first of all, on this, and I'm pleased to see the policy come to a head. Can you just give us some information, and I think I missed the workshop on this one, around the delineation between when we're acting our personal capacity versus not personal capacity? Some will be obvious, but if you were just giving an overview of where that line is.
Through you, Lord Mayor, I do give some examples in the report about what would be in and what would be out. One of the things the McCullough decision talks about, and we keep coming back to this, is around that you can't, noting the facts of that case, is that something simply being on account of a genesis of your role with council isn't enough. So, for example, if something just happens because to you in a personal capacity, just because you happen to be a councillor, that's probably not enough to invoke the insurance policy and coverage. If, however, you are fulfilling a particular individual or collective statutory function, so for example, if you are exercising your vote in the chamber tonight, that is very clearly something that the policy should be used to defend you, or if you are acting as the spokesperson of a council under delegation, that would be another example. Or if you were chairing a council committee, that would be another example. I've tried not to get too granular in the examples in the report and the policy, because I find when you do, you always end up missing something. So I've tried to keep it in terms of first principles to allow people to actually make head nor tail of it.
Okay, thank you. So based on that, participating in debate and bringing motions would be in the professional capacity and covered?
In my view, any work that a councillor individually or collectively undertakes in the chamber would be covered, because that is a core function under section 20 and 28.
Yeah, thank you. And any coverage with the policy, is that subject to good faith test?
Yes, well, the good faith test is a defence. So what would happen in that circumstance, whatever the matter might be, and let's assume it's something that happens in the chamber, for example, so the insurance policy is invoked to provide you with legal advice to defend whatever the claim is, the defence might turn on a good faith defence under the Act. So the good faith comes in at the back, not the front.
But if it was, if there was conduct and it was found to not be in good faith, because a complaint was upheld or whatever it was, there would be no reimbursement or coverage in that situation?
Look, it's hard to speak in generalisations, but my expectation would be if there was some conduct that was so outrageous that you couldn't rationally argue it was in good faith, I think the insurer would be unlikely to accept the claim.
Okay, thank you. And the final point of the policy that remains unchanged from the last is that the council is to provide a final approval of any reimbursement. That's intentionally remaining in there, and that principle still applies through you, Chair?
Yeah, that is intentional, yes, and I believe that is best practice governance that should be in there.
Thank you. How many times in the last council term in this current council term, has council approved any reimbursement?
I believe that it probably has not, and this is an issue that is somewhat unusual, because the reason that has happened is because the policy has been invoked. So the insurance policy, this is distinct from council policy, which gets you to the insurance policy, is to provide legal support to a councillor to defend a code of conduct claim. Now, a code of conduct claim by nature is confidential until it is the subject of a determination report. So because of the nature of the complaint, you can't bring it into the chamber. So it's somewhat unusual because it turns on that.
Okay, thank you. Well, the situation, in my opinion, is a lot clearer. Obviously, there's still a lot of unknowns in case-by-case approach, but overall, I think it's a very good thing that we now know that following on from the McCulloch decision, quite rightly, no ratepayer money can be used for code of conduct defences, and also that there'll be more scrutiny, I hope, around the use of ratepayer resources for writing to individuals or the media seeking that they moderate or remove comments, because in my opinion that's an inappropriate use of ratepayer funds, because at its heart defamation is a individual focused tort, and ratepayer money should never have been used for that purpose, and I'm aware that it has been over the years on at least 7 occasions. So I'm glad that this issue has been brought to light and we've got a revised policy for it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? No? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. 18 is the proposed planning application fee waiver for the She Wellness Centre. Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Harvey. Any discussion? Councillor Posselt.
Firstly, it's obviously welcome news to see this application come to our city, to Hobart, in a precinct immediately next to the Royal Hobart Hospital and the Menzies Research Institute at UTAS. Women's health and gynae-onc are actually quite challenging services to access in Tasmania, and so any strengthening of the service provision through this proposed centre is super welcome news, not just for Hobartians but for Tasmanians more broadly. So I thank the She Wellness Centre and the Peter MacCallum Institute for investing in Tasmanians, and I can't wait to see this be built. I did note that in the report that there was some commentary from officers that we develop a policy on what fee waivers might look like. And I'd request that very early doors that policy come to a workshop because there may be some strategic decisions that we want to take with regard to missing developments in this city, be they a medical research and treatment facility such as this, or be that residential accommodation which we just are consistently not seeing built despite approvals because of economic pressures on developers. It may be that this council wishes to take a much broader approach to fee waiving for development applications of a certain kind to ensure that the benefit that this community needs to see through development of commercial office space, development of medical facilities, development of educational facilities and development of residential facilities are all considered by this council strategically. I think this is a really exciting space to be in, and I'm very pleased that the officers brought the recommendation that we do in fact waive the $45,000 or so for this development application. I thank them for their advice.
Councillor Lohberger.
I just had a question about the fees we're waiving. The advertising fee, is that something that we actually have to pay to the Mercury?
Yes. Oh, Mr. Noy.
Yes, that's correct, Lord Mayor. It's a cost recovery fee.
So, effectively, I mean, the great bulk of this application is about the application fee. So that's $44,800. Then there's $475 advertising fee. So just to be clear, is that what the Mercury charges us, or does that advertising fee take into account a little bit of other stuff as well as the Mercury cost?
Look, it's primarily the cost of the Mercury advertising, but there is also a cost associated with officers putting up signage, sending out letters, that sort of thing. But, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Noy. Look, I'm really supportive of this. Obviously, I'm a little bit unsettled about us paying a fee on behalf of these guys rather than waiving it. I think that's a little bit unusual, but I guess given that we're the ones who charge it, it's the simplest thing for the Wellness Centre to ask for. Regardless of that, I will be supporting this motion, and yeah, I think it's the location of this centre is excellent. It's really, really well located. A bit regrettable what's probably going to happen to the old Theatre Royal Hotel, but I think that's been surrounded anyway and sort of enveloped by UTAS already. So the heritage values there are really quite reduced. Obviously being across the road from the hospital also is an issue. So look, happy to support this one. Just thought it was a little bit odd that we're paying the advertising fee, but that's the way it goes. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Bloomfield.
Can I just ask, once this is established, they're functioning, do they pay rates or is that discounted too?
You can answer that question. Yeah, take it on notice.
That's really material to this discussion.
Most and I apologise, I did miss the question.
It's just around whether a charity medical centre would be subject to a rates exemption.
So you, Chair, need to take that one on notice. In order to qualify for the charity rates exemption, you need to be owned and operated for a charitable purpose. So I would need to
So in all likelihood, this organisation is already getting a free kick with ongoing free rent, with the rates being nil anyway. If that is the case, then I find it a little bit unfair to have to not only take out expenses for them, but also to effectively put out costs associated with helping them with their development also for free. We have more than one charity in this city, and no one else has ever put their hand out for this. And this is not the time for us to be handing out $45,000 if this organisation is already going to be rates free in addition.
Further discussion, Councillor Coates.
Thank you. Look, I sort of appreciate where Alderman Bloomfield is coming from. I guess I think you've got to be fair in this process in so much as I understand it, it's a blanket rule. So if you're a charity, if you're an education provider, if you're a certain class of things, then you either qualify for rates or not. If the gynecological, if I've said that correctly, cancer group qualify, then they qualify. That to me is a different question to what's on the agenda tonight. And maybe down the track we'll begin to look at how many of those rate exemptions are there, what is that policy fit for purpose or not, but that's a different question. In this one, I think the amount of money, yes, it's a reasonably large amount, but in the scale of what this proposed investment is, they have secured a $10 million grant. It's lovely to see the state government investing into infrastructure in our city. The total cost is $21 million, according to what's in the report here, with extra philanthropic sources. So look, in the scheme of a $21 million budget, 45 grand is not much. I guess if that's the only contribution from a direct cash contribution at the City of Hobart via foregone revenue, it's probably not the sort of worst thing in terms of getting it activated. I guess I would reflect that there's always going to be exceptions where people need to come to council, but it probably is an opportunity for us as a council to reflect upon, do our current procedures and policies in this space adequate, so that in future if things like this occur, they can sort of get delegated to officers and have we can be in charge of the policy, so then that can be actioned, rather than sort of having to come to council. Although obviously when it comes to foregone revenue or grants, there is a place for community input. But look, if that gets redeveloped into a $21 million centre, that's probably overall a very good thing for Tasmania and a good thing for the city, so I'll support it.
Ellie?
Yes, it's in principle I think it's a great idea, but I just think we're on a real slippery slope here. There's a lot of good organisations that deserve this. I just think we're opening up the door. The minute we do it with this organisation here, how do we draw the line in the sand for a lot of these other good organisations that are doing good things? So, and there's a reason we charge these fees as well. We're actually doing stuff for it. It's not. We're not just grabbing money off them for a cash grab. So I just think, look, I'm not warming to this too much. At the very least, there should be some, even if it was a 50% discount or whatever it was, I just think it's always good to charge people and for stuff like this. Look, I think, we as Councillor Coates alluded to there, we just can't have every single one of these coming to there. We've got to have a defined policy and procedure for this. So I'd suggest that we have an amendment to say, let's develop a policy and procedure and get an officer's recommendation. I beg your pardon, it is saying that, yeah. Sorry, yeah. So that being said, it's just, I don't know, I'm just not comfortable about it. I'd like to hear what a few of the other elected members have to say on it. We're just opening the door here for something that could cause us a lot of problem, I think.
Councillor Elliott?
Thank you. I do definitely take on board the principles around fairness and consistency, and if there wasn't a policy recommendation I'd be championing for that, but there is. But I also, like Councillor Purcell, I would like to have a lot more flexibility when it comes to fees and a tiered structured approach, whether it's the 50% or whatever, because there are developments that we want to encourage and support in the city. And you can just see, when you see here an application fee as $44,000, you can quickly see how things add up to being $500,000 for a potential development before you're even out of the ground, like you're still on paperwork. I disagree with Councillor, Councillor Kelly, around we do stuff for that. I mean, I know we do in terms of assessing applications, but I think that's our job. It's a community service to do that. I don't think it's right for us to try to be cost recovery on assessing applications. So I wholly support the waiver. I definitely take on board the risk of setting precedents. But I agree with Councillor Purcell, it would be great to see a policy workshop with elected members so that we can input into the structure and the framework around that. And I do believe that it is appropriate for the council to be absorbing costs, reducing costs in a targeted way, and making sure that we are always reflective of the fact that when costs are high, they are a big barrier to development, and we need development in our city, especially something with such a good community purpose as this.
Alderman Zuko.
Yeah, Lord Mayor, if we're going to go down the track of developing a policy, there was a policy a few years ago, maybe we can have a look at that. It's sitting in our files somewhere. I think it was only about 6 years ago or 8 years ago, which we, no, 8 years ago, we stopped doing it. It was there. It was a development assistance policy. It was developed by our economic development manager, Mr Tim Short at the time, and it was going along nicely until council decided to scrap it. So let's revisit it. Maybe we should also go down the track of looking at having a serious economic development director that can encourage development not only in the commercial sector but right across the spectrum. You know, that's what, you know, part of the reason why we haven't got cranes in the sky is the cost. But you know, if it assisted development, at the end of the day, I look at it this way: an empty parcel of land provides us X amount of rates. A full parcel of land provides us a lot more rates. It's just very simple and common sense. The other thing is too, because of the costs associated with development at the moment, maybe we should go and have a look at some of the things I tried to push a few years ago with what is called spot rezoning, where a development meets certain criteria, meaning it could be on a corner that's not overshadowing anyone, blah, blah, blah. That could be spot rezoned to give you extra height and extra bulk. And that will make developments viable. And the last thing, and it's probably somewhere in the coffers of Mr Neil Noy, which I put a notice of motion up, Lord Mayor, in regards to writing to the state government in regards to the council's ability to actually, what was the wording? To develop God, I've gone blank. Sorry. Develop, in conjunction with developers, an agreement so that developments, say housing developments, could have a mixture of normal housing and affordable housing, not social housing, and for those type of developers to actually gain bonus ratios for heights and that. That notice of motion report came back and it was put into the bulk thing of our housing policy and was lost. So I'm not going to move any amendments and all that, but maybe when we're looking at this at a policy in regards to assisting development, I think it's very important because Councillor Kelly's so much right that if I'm going to support this, we approve this, but if we don't have a policy, it's going to be ad hoc. So I think what we could be doing is having a look at the policies that we had in the past, having a look at some of these ideas that have been pushed over the years, but maybe are sitting in the coffers of the dungeons of council officers that never seen the light. But we need to see more development in the city of Hobart, because in my travels I was up in Brisbane a few weeks ago, and I've got to say to you, things are happening in Brisbane, things are happening on the Gold Coast. Melbourne, there's a bit happening, but there's not much happening here.
Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, just two things that help me support this. One, the public benefit. I think that's, quite significant to have such a centre in Hobart, and the fact that they're not for profit. So they're not out to improve their shares. So I'm happy to support this organisation. When it comes to supporting other developers, it's all based on merit. I'm happy to have a policy, but I think two things I'd love to include in a policy, or I'd like to include in a policy, is the public benefit and also whether they're for profit or not for profit. So I don't feel very warm to giving away public money to private enterprise to make more money. So that's where I would be starting the argument for a policy here. So there can be some sort of developer support, as Alderman Zuko has talked about. We had something in the past, but I think that's more in the encouraging information side, about what you get in Hobart if you come to Hobart to do things. Happy for that promotion to encourage, but to give money away for others to make more money is not something I want to. But this one, very warm.
Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I see this as a very simple issue. It's asking us two things. One, that pursuant to Section 207, having looked at Section 207, because we don't have a policy, therefore we've got to use Section 207 to make the decision. It's very simple. If we had a policy, we would have used the policy, but because we don't, therefore we go under this Act. Now, it's come to us, and there are a number of factors in there. One, it's an organisation that we support. Two, there is a large amount of money that's going to be invested, 20 million plus. And for us to then waiver that, it's good to have a policy, but we don't. But the second point is very clear, realizing, acknowledging that we are saying we will have a policy. And the policy will take into account all the various factors as to who should we give it to, or what the criteria will be. And I'm sure staff will come back to us with quite a wholesome recommendation with regards to this. But I also take the point mentioned by Councillor Kelly and also a few of the others with regards to the advertising fee and the total cost. And because we don't have the policy, unfortunately, I'm quite happy to support the total application fee of 44,881. And to be mean, I could say, let's ask them to pay the advertising fee, but it might show me as someone who's very mean for a little $400, we're trying to hold this back. So on that basis, I would support this. Thank you.
Any further discussion? There being none, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Say no. No. Show of hands, all those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Coates, Councillor Passelt, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Harvey, the Deputy and the Mayor.
And against? That's carried. We'll move on to item 19, which is responses to questions without notice. Moved by Councillor Harvey, seconded by Councillor Lohberger. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 20 is questions without notice. Has anyone got any questions? Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'd just like to know this financial year, so 2024-25, how much have we spent this year on legal costs associated with elected members?
Further questions? Councillor Passelt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just in relation to a social media post from tonight, a claim that there was a motion moved to reduce our rates to 2% and that it was rejected. Was the council ever afforded the opportunity to vote this evening on a 2% rate rise? Did that occur and was it rejected?
It was a foreshadowed alternate. So we never voted on it because the motion as proposed in the officer report was carried.
So just to clarify, that motion was never put and so it couldn't have been rejected?
So it was rejected.
Paraphrasing Alderman Zuko, it was rejected in the sense that the motion as proposed in the agenda was carried, therefore negating the need to consider the alternate.
Just to clarify, just that question, let me rephrase. In this chamber tonight, did we receive a foreshadowed motion to reduce our rates for it to be at 2%?
Yes, you received a foreshadowed motion, but it never proceeded to a vote because the motion in the agenda had to fail to bring on the foreshadowed, and that didn't occur.
So did we vote on that foreshadowed motion?
No.
Thank you.
Any other questions? There being none, we'll move on to questions arising during debate. There's a register of questions be received and noted.
So moved.
Seconded by Councillor Kitsos. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Yes, say no. Carried unanimously. Now I'd like a motion to move into closed. Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Harvey. All those in favour say aye. Again say no.